Hi, everybody. We'll start in a few minutes. How are you?
Hello, I'm going to be one of your sign language interpreters for a student you have.
Okay, thank you.
Myself, there's going to be two of us. I don't see Hannah on my team, and we'll alternate back and forth every 20 minutes.
Okay.
And if you're recording, I'll double check that with her. You have to spotlight, I think, and that way the student can go back if they want to rewatch and see the interpreter. I'm not super familiar with Spotlight. Have you done that before?
No, I haven't. I normally upload my lecture to YouTube for caption.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, so I post the Zoom recording after class, and then YouTube takes a few hours to give me the caption, and then I go through the caption. So the caption video will go up probably either later today or tomorrow. It all depends on how much traffic YouTube has. So
Okay.
I'll look into Spotlight. I haven't used Spotlight, so I will find out how.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Captioning is fine. So thank you. All right.
Yeah, no problem. We'll start in a couple minutes.
Sure. Waiting for my team.
So we'll start in a minute, give everybody a chance to get on. And I'll do the formal introduction and we'll talk about what we need to do today. This is a fairly small class, so about 20 people. Let me double check my other camera. Okay, so I put in the chat, if you can please type your full name and let me know what kind of computer you're using, so that way we kind of know your direction in this class, and hopefully we'll talk about the project shortly, okay? Just formal introduction, my name is Casey Nguyen. I probably met some of you already, and I might have not met other people, but I am a professor at Moreno Valley College. I've been there for 3 years. I teach in cybersecurity and computer science programming. So this is the first time we're running the non-credit computer repair course, CIS824A, which is part 1 of the certificate computer and security. So if you are taking this class, you might consider taking CIS 824B and C following the course so you can obtain the certificate. So today what I'd like to start is to go over the syllabus and the course information. I will put in the link for Canvas, so if you haven't accessed Canvas, you can do so. Give me 1 second. So there's a link in chat that allows you to access Canvas, which is our learning management system. We use this system to distribute course content, and you will use this to submit your assignment. And if you haven't gotten access to Canvas, you still have some time later this week to submit your assignment. I open some assignments until next Saturday. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so I will go into screen share. Please, if you have any questions, you can unmute and ask, or you can type it into chat. I might not see your chat question right away, but I will check chat and I will answer the questions when we have some time in between. Okay. So here is the Canvas content of the course. If you are new to Canvas, I put some link for Canvas tutorial on how to use Canvas to do various things, like taking quizzes, submit assignments, work in teams, etc. Okay, so I will start with course information. As you go through the schedule, it probably gives you a brief description of the course. So this is very computer hardware and computer maintenance oriented. I take the components from the CompTIA A+ course, which is CIS824A, and I built this course. So CompTIA A+ is a certification that the industry recognized for the people who want to pursue career in technical support, like fixing computer for organization, helping people maintain computer systems. So this class is going to go over troubleshooting techniques, going over some of the components that you need to know on how to and use the information to repair the computer. And we will go over how to diagnose systems. We're going to get into a little bit of troubleshooting on the software level, but I will start today with laptop repair, and then we will get into mobile devices and your general desktop in the next few weeks. This is a non-credit course, so it's going to show up on the transcript as 0 credit. The main goal in this course is to give you the skill sets that you need to be able to find work in the field or maintain your own system. And it's part of the 3 courses certificate. So 824B and C is to follow this class. And this class is going to be covered in 4 weeks. So we start our week 1 today, and I include the schedule as follows: week 2 next week, and then the 2 weeks following that. So when you look at the course information, it gives you the general content. And for our class session, we will always meet on Zoom, so that way you can ask questions, you can look at some of the demonstration that I'm going to be doing, and the Zoom information is included here. I don't use Confer Zoom only because I had given up my license when I did CyberCamp this year. And it requires a little bit of time for the administrator to reissue the license with Confer Zoom. I use my Zoom license, Zoom Pro, and the information is noted there for your Zoom access. So next is going to be our syllabus, and you have the option to download it. So if you click the arrow, you can download it, or you can preview it inside the actual page. And the syllabus contains your general course description and how the course format's going to go. We talked a little bit about that when we look at the course information. So in this class, the course content will consist of Looking at different type of input and output devices. So I/O stands for input and output devices, and we'll talk about that today. Different functionality in the different components and their purposes. Looking at software components like operating system and applications and their purposes in our world, which is system repair and maintenance. And then we're going to get into processor, which is the brain of the computer. We'll look at the different types, the legacy and the current, how the bus and the socket, how you can install that onto the motherboard. And then we're going to look at benchmarking performance, so the speed, right, and how to utilize that for your performance upgrade. Looking at cache memory, what the internal memory to the processor, and what does that mean? How to install, troubleshoot, replace, and upgrade processors. So I get into a little bit of it today when we look at the laptop. I have a laptop open. We'll get into the motherboard, which is like the nervous system of the computer. So we plug all the components into the motherboard. We'll look at the form factors, which is size, right? How everything is laid out. And it's important to know this because when you build a computer, when you troubleshoot the computer, when you replace the board, you have to make sure it fits and other components can be plugged into it. We'll look at the chipsets, which is the chips that's soldered or built into the board itself. We'll look at the I/O buses, so all the channels and the slots that you can plug components in, how to troubleshoot, replace, and upgrade motherboard. We'll look at BIOS, which is it generally holds the setup information for your computer. So every system would have basic input output, and so that will contain what kind of devices is plugged in. We'll look at how to upgrade BIOS and how to back it up to a USB drive. Looking at how to troubleshoot some of the errors and then some of the pre-boot errors. So if somebody gave you a system that has an error at the beginning, how can we take a look at that and be able to fix the problem? Next is the memory, which is RAM, random access memory. This is used for all applications and your system OS. So we'll look at the type, the speed. We'll dive a little bit into it today. We'll look at how to install, troubleshoot, and replace and upgrade the memory. And one of the cheapest, easiest thing that you can do to your system outside of the iMac, I guess now the new iMac, they don't want you to actually go in and upgrade much. But for your general PC and your desktop, you can upgrade the memory to allow your application to perform better. We'll look at storage drives, hard drive, solid state drive, different type of drives, including optical drives, which is your CD, DVD, Blu-ray, which they are becoming obsolete, but there's still systems that you will come across that will have those drives. So we'll look at how we can upgrade and troubleshoot and install. We'll look at video adapters, which for if you're into gaming or video or audio editing, this is an important area. How display, which is the video adapter, different type, how we can install that and how we can interface with our system. And then we can look at different monitors, right? What's the difference between LCD, OLED? How to install different type of video display. And now it's fairly simple because you use HDMI. So we'll talk about some of the legacy connection, the ports, and some of the components that would be required to understand video adapter and monitor. We'll look at the power supply unit. So on the laptop, that will be your battery, but on the desktop, you will have a PSU, so power supply unit. Form factor, which is the size and the layout, how that fits into a case of a desktop. Power distribution and calculation, what wattage do we want to get to accommodate our system? right? How to install, replace, and troubleshoot. And then we'll get into communications like internet connectivity, which goes back to our Ethernet adapter or our Wi-Fi adapter. Looking at network connection, right? How to troubleshoot some of that. And a lot of the times people call for tech support because they want to get help in connecting to a certain website, possibly because they lose connection. We'll look at a little bit of security protection. I have dedicated 824C for security, so that will be following this class. It's the last one in all three parts. So your learning outcome, what are you getting out of this class? We want to practice troubleshooting techniques, hardware and software. We want to test possible solutions to be able to repair our system, hardware and software wise. We want to perform system maintenance and services. So very simple things on how to do some of the maintenance on the software side, clean up your registry, how to perform some of the services, how to reduce some of the processing power so that way your system can perform better, things that are running in the background, and how to upgrade for personal and business use. There's no prerequisite in this course. And I don't require a textbook for this class because it's non-credit. But if you want to dive into it further, this is an optional textbook. This is a really good textbook if you are looking to take the A+ certification, which is an examination that you will have to sit there 2 parts, or I'll post some information on Canvas related to this. Okay? So core 1 and core 2, and the student has to pass it with an 80% or more. That certification lasts for 3 years. So if you have the certification, you put it on your resume, that will help you get potentially jobs in the field. We do have an apprenticeship program that's going to be launching in spring. I have IT employers that are looking for students to work. So through the apprenticeship program, you can get paid to, work throughout the semester, or you can get the credit for the work experience. So, and the director for that is Jennifer McDaniel. She's putting together a package for me. So once I have that, that will include application, the area of interest, all of that. I will put that on the Canvas shell, so that way you will have access to that, and if you're interested, you can apply. Any questions so far as course content and our goals?
I do.
Yes.
Do we need like a computer and then you show us how to fix it? Do we need like a little like a toolkit or something?
Yes, we'll talk about that when we do address the course project.
Okay.
Yes. So my course project, I require that that you find a computer. It doesn't have to be your own, but if you can find someone that has a broken computer, that way you will have some hands-on. So ideally, if I was to teach this course on campus, I would have system for you to work with. Unfortunately, because we are doing virtually this semester, I'm unable to give you access to that. So I would like for you to at least find option. You can look at your own system now and possibly upgrade memory or something as part of the project. But if you do have someone, or you have a computer system that needs repairing, maybe it's sitting in the garage or in one of the boxes, then you can take it out, dust it off, and then we can start seeing how we can make it working again. And that's the whole purpose. And I'll talk about tools shortly. Okay?
Does the laptop count?
Yes, laptop counts.
Really?
Yes, desktop or laptop. So it doesn't have to be a desktop. So we'll start with laptop today. Okay? Any other questions?
Yes.
You're welcome. So next, I will go ahead and look at class procedures, activities, and grading. So this is a non-credit course. Basically, we spend 4 hours together every Saturday for 4 weeks. So I like to address a lot of the coursework while I'm with you, like classwork and lab. So that way you will be able to understand, ask questions, and of course, if you need to finish it throughout the week, you can. But I'm going to try to give you the majority of the content while we're together. And in order to receive the passing, you have to complete most of the required credit or all required assignments. So you need to receive a pass in order to have the course completion. And if the student had a no pass, this student can retake the course, of course, when it's being offered again. I put everything on Canvas using modules. So the first thing when you log on Canvas, when you click the course, you will see module, and think of module as weekly activities, right? I organize everything weekly. So the first module is going to give you the course content information. The second module is week 1. It'll say week 1, and you're going to have all the assignments that are tied to that week in the module. Now, we will try to address everything. And when it says Sunday or the due date, I usually put the due date on the assignment, so check the due date. Normally, I give the student the entire week, unless it's like team activity, we would do one today, and that's due by the end of today. Late assignments, I do take late assignments since this course is only 4 weeks. I don't take any late assignment after the last day of class because I'm required to send your grade information and your attendance information to WebAdvisor, so that way you can get this documented in transcript right away. So my turnaround for this course is approximately 2 business days. So after the last Saturday, I have until Tuesday to get everything uploaded. So I do take late assignment throughout the span of the course. If you submit a week late after the due date, it's 10% deducted from the earned grade. If it's 2 weeks late, it's 20% deducted from the earned grade. Okay, so after the 2 weeks, since it's only 4-week course, I don't accept anything after that. Now the activities in class, we're gonna do some in-class assignments. So I'll go through my lecture and we'll do some question and answer, so that way it helps you remember. And I've been teaching for 15 years. This is a technique that I've used throughout my years, and I found that it's effective, that the students is, actively taking notes while they're answering. So this is my way of helping you remember and understand the terminology and the concept. So we'll take care of this. And it doesn't have to be at the end of the session for today's assignment. I open it until next Saturday. So if you want to go through it again throughout the week, you can. Hands-on projects. So there was a question earlier Cecilia asked about our projects. So I would like for you to, from now until next week, to start looking at what kind of system you want to upgrade, whether it's the one you're using now or, another system that you could find, whether someone is giving it to you, you're helping a friend fix a computer. You can tell your friend that you're learning how to do computer repair in the course. And sometimes they might have extra system that they want to be able to loan to give you, so you can help them repair. So we're going to address this throughout the next few weeks. And then you're going to have quiz every week. I don't give exam in this class because it's 4 weeks. So, and the quiz is going to cover all the content that we go over every week. So the quizzes are going to be open for the week. And in order to receive a passing grade, you need to get A, B, or C in the course in order to receive a pass, and a no pass is a D or an F. And the scale for the grade is as follows. 90 to 100% is an A, 80 to 89 is a B, 70 to 79 is a C, 60 to 69 is a D, and below that is an F. Okay? Any question? Okay. Give me 1 second. I apologize. My dog is scratching on the door. He's gonna break down the door.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
So if I do have something that I can work on, but it's missing parts, should I go ahead and like buy the parts or?
So you don't have to make this very expensive. My goal is to make it, low cost as possible. So if you want to replace all the parts,
No, it's
sure.
missing parts.
Yeah. So that it's missing. So if you want to add the parts so that way it's completely working, yes. But for the course, you can just take a look at one area of the missing parts and work on that. I'm fine with that. But ideally, I would want you to have a working computer, right, after you do the repair, because that's the whole objective, is to get you to have a working computer. And it's a very rewarding feeling when you get that. It's like I tell my students, when you go through it, right, sometimes it can be very challenging, but so yes. And I can help you look for the affordable parts throughout, and that's the whole point, is to give you guidance in the project so you can have hands-on. Okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you have any suggestions of where we could possibly find like a laptop to work with when we start doing repairs? Because mine is on its very last leg. The side is cracked. It's like I have to open it carefully. I have an external like fan on it, so I really don't want to. And then I might be teleworking coming pretty soon, so I don't want to mess up. Are there any like maybe thrift stores or like places where would have them?
I'm gonna resend the email to our TSS department at Moreno Valley College.
Okay.
They did mention to me before COVID started that I asked them whenever that they come across used or broken laptop to save it for my class.
Okay.
I generally just try to gather people's unwanted system, and they mentioned to me that they did have a few. Now that I do have some access to the campus, I can actually ask them to maybe store it in a certain location, and possibly if the student absolutely cannot find their own system to repair, we do have some in reserve, so that way you can borrow it and then work on it. Because I don't want you to spend a ton of money just to get through this course, right? So, and then I do have some information about where you can find some computer parts, and used computer parts, or older computer parts and older computers that you can get that's affordable.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll put some of that information in Canvas. Give me maybe tomorrow or Monday, I will be able to work on that and give you some links that you can look at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yes.
I have like an iPad 1. Is that too complicated to try to fix?
So we will talk about mobile devices. Now, is the iPad still under one? I assume that's not under one.
Well, I think that like the digitizer may not work, or it might need a change of battery.
Okay, so yeah, so we can probably look at options on how to change the battery of the mobile devices. But fixing mobile devices, you have to have appropriate tools. So we can talk about the type of toolkits that you should acquire to open up screens and to be able to work with mobile devices.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So my answer would be yes. We can attempt it. And then it's a good learning process for you because most of the time now you're gonna have clients that require you to fix mobile devices like smartphones, tablets. Okay, other questions? All right. So in general, here's the grade category. It's broken into these categories here. Your quizzes are going to be 20%. So each week we're going to have a short quiz. They're about 10 questions and you have 3 attempts. So if you took it the first time and it's not, the score is not what you like, you can redo it again. And the highest score is going to be recorded in Canvas gradebook. Our in-class assignment and participation will be 30% of our grade. Sometime I will have group activity. Sometime I will have, just question and answer that you would type out and submit. Or if you wanted to handwrite and scan, that's fine with me. Our lab activities, that will be 30%. So every week we're going to have a lab exercise, right? Whether, we are going to look at look at some of the ports today. And then other times we are just going to look at demonstrations of things. So I try to make it a little bit more interactive so that way we can learn and be productive in class. Our hands-on projects is going to be 20%, which is troubleshooting our own system or helping someone repair their system. And altogether, that will be 100%. In general, I abide by the college policy for student code of conduct. Just respect each other and, don't be offensive to one another. And there is student grievance and policy procedure that we follow. So if you have concerns or grievance, you can file that with the student services and also Dean of Instruction. So attendance and participation, if I see that a student is lacking participation, meaning not submitting anything, not accessing Zoom to participate in class together with our group, then I reserve every right to drop the student from the course. And if the student wishes to drop the course, that student needs to look at Web Advisor's schedule so that way in case, because sometimes they don't let you drop after a certain period. But since this course is so short, right? So add and drop right now, I think students can still add the course. They just need to get an add code from me. But I think in the next couple of weeks, it's going to lock in. So that will come toward the end of our class. So just make sure you check out the deadlines based on the college requirement. So behavior issues in general, in my 15 years of teaching, I don't really have much of the problem in this area. But in the case that I do, I report it to the college and student services will carry out their procedure. The student could be dismissed from the course or the school. I don't tolerate cheating, so this comes through with all my courses. Do your own work, submit your own answers. If you have questions, please address it with me. Sometimes, we have stuff that we can post on Canvas that we can share. So go through those questions and answer to be able to search for your own answer. If you do use other sources, I prefer that you reference those sources. And in general, right, I don't require APA citation for this course because it's very short and non-credit, but you can put in the link and the information where you got the reference from. That will be fine. Okay. And for accessibility, if you require additional accommodation like longer time for quiz, I usually assign 60 minutes for a 10 question quiz. So that generally gives you about 6 minutes per question. I thought, I took survey in all my classes and all the students said that that's good enough time. But if you need additional time or if you need other accommodations, please contact the STS office. They are located in the library building in room 221, or you can call, right? You can look at their website that's provided here and be able to get especially additional accommodation if you need. And here's my information. If you call this number, it's going to go to my desk phone at Moreno Valley College. If you leave a voicemail, they're going to send me your voicemail clip in email right away, and I can check it. If you need to talk to me, via the phone, I can call you back. The best way to get a hold of me is via email. I'm pretty responsive in email. At the longest would be within the 24 hours, but I generally email back within a few hours or less. I hold office hours on Zoom. Here's the time. And if you can't make this scheduled office hour time, you can set up an appointment, but please send your request appointment ahead of time. So that way, if I'm in a meeting, I can let you know, or if I'm teaching other classes, I can set up other time with you. And the password information and the Zoom information is provided there. Okay, any questions? Okay, so this is our syllabus. And again, here's my contact information and office hours. And then on the next page, I included Moreno Valley College resources. I want you to know that Moreno Valley does have a laptop loan program for usage for learning. So in case if your system is not working and you need to log in for class, you can request a laptop and you need to bring your student ID. They hold your ID until you return the laptop. In some cases, I have a few students last semester that had laptop issues, so they went and they borrow another laptop to use. There's tutorial services, crisis intervention, library information, and counseling. Most of the counselors, they are aware of the non-credit certificate and unit, but the best counselor to see for this type of courses is your CTE counselor. And if you just go to the college website and if you search CTE counseling or counselor, it will give you the link for the CTE counselors. And I think I added the link there for you. So here's our weekly schedule. This one is the projection. So if we have some slowdown or changes, I will modify this. And it lists the activity that we're going to be doing. So if you're not sure what you're going to be doing on certain week, or if you have work schedule that might conflict with our course time, you want to see what you need to do during that week because you missed Zoom, then you can go to this page right here. It says course plan weekly schedule in the first module, and it tells you what we need to do every week. Okay? Any questions? No question. Okay, so next is a discussion thread. I found this very useful in the last few semesters that I've been conducting classes, especially when it's virtual. This is an area where you can post questions and answer. So if you look in there and you found somebody that has the same question and that you knew of the answer, you can also post your answer there. But I look at this occasionally, and if I see a student posting the question, I would answer. But if you need immediate answer, you can send a Canvas inbox message, or you can send me an email. Okay? So this is our Q&A for the course. You can also go in there and see if somebody posts the question. So what I want to do next is I am going to do a team activity with you first. So that way we can warm up and then be able to see some of the people in our class and work with them. And maybe sometime you would need your colleagues' help. So on this page, is a team challenge week 1. Okay. And the team that gets the most accurate answer today, right, would receive some kind of prize. I have to determine how I'm going to be able to distribute the prize, possibly digitally. So since we have about 20 people in class, we're going to form a team of 4. So what I'll do is I will do a Zoom breakout room. I got to make sure that we have the appropriate people in the room so that way you can complete this challenge. So one person in your group is going to click that link, and that person's going to fill out the answer based on your feedback. Okay, so if you click this link, you will have this form, and it has 10 questions. Okay, first you have to list your team members, then you have to decide on the team name, nothing X-rated. Okay, so we wanted to keep it neutral. Then you're gonna list the type of systems that your team members are using, okay? And then you would identify the most current iOS and Android version for mobile devices, because we're gonna start getting into some mobile devices later on. You need to list, as a team, you need to list 3 types of mobile devices that are commonly used in business. And you need to list 3 types of mobile devices accessories. So what do I mean by accessories? Like, you know, wireless charger, things like that, things that you want to add from on the mobile device, because you see business that's requiring that today. And then if you need to access 3 websites to buy computer parts, what would that be? And everybody should say Amazon, right? But not just Amazon. There are tons of other websites, right? Like Tiger Direct. There are so many others that sell computer parts online, and you can take a look at, you know, so we can share this information as a team. And then 3 tools that you need to computer repair. So before I start going to the lecture, this is my way of assessing what do you know right now together as a group, right? And then I want to make sure that we have some teamwork. So rate your team, right? So you can, if you didn't have a good experience, you can give a low score by clicking the stars. Or if you have a great experience in your team, you can click 5 stars. So what I like to do is I like to take about 15 minutes to give you the opportunity to meet your team members. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to give you a breakout room. And so I got to make sure Hannah, let's see, who else is on here? So we want to get to, 1 second. Any questions while we wait? No questions while we wait? Let me see if Sue. So I'm going to put about 5 rooms together, right? So that's going to give you 3 to 4 per team. And then hopefully if Katie and Hannah is put in the wrong room, we'll move you. Okay. So I'll go ahead and create all the rooms. It's going to ask you to click the link to join the room. Once you join the room, right, I want to make sure that I post this link into the chat in case you guys don't have Canvas. 1 second. So I'm going to drop a link for the Microsoft form on there. And then just one person is going to answer the form. Now for everybody to submit, when you work on the form, what you can do is you can put down your team name once you're done and then click submit on Canvas, right? So you don't have to put all the additional information for everybody else. It's going to be like that. Okay, are you ready? Okay, so let me get a breakout room set up. Hi, Hannah and Katie. Can you tell me the student name that you're working with? Katie?
I'll go ahead and send you that in a message if that's okay.
Yes, please. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I just gotta make sure that you are with the student. Okay. Okay, so let's see. We got one more room. Thanks for your patience. Sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna send you to the room, and then once you're in the room, just dedicate somebody to fill out the form. Okay, so we're gonna do this for about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna come back, and you're gonna get 30 seconds to add back to our Zoom meeting. Actually, I'll give you 15 minutes. Okay, all right, so. Okay. All right, so let me add Jessica into a room. You guys are finished already? Wow, fast. Okay, so we'll give everybody else a few more minutes and then we'll close the breakout room. In the meantime, if you have access to Canvas, you can download your week 1 notes. And also week 1 assignment. Let me double check the breakout room and making sure everybody is. I think there's one person that's in the breakout room 4, so let me go get her. Welcome back. How did that go? Okay? We learned a little bit about other students. Okay, so what I like to do next is I'm going to save your answer toward the end when we're going to talk a little bit about, what you put down. But I like to do next is if you do have access to Canvas, go into Canvas and download week 1 notes. That will be in the week 1 module, or if you click next after the team activity, it's going to show you the week 1 notes. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and drop that file in the chat because I know that there's some students that don't have Canvas access. So give me 1 minute. Okay. And you can view it in Canvas, or you can view it via after you download it. Okay. I'm going to drop in another file. You also need another file, which is the in-class assignment file, which is the next page. Go ahead and download that one as well. Now, if you don't have Microsoft Office, the RCCD has a free license for all students. On Canvas, on the bottom of Canvas tab, you should see Office 365. And once you click that, you can download or use the Office Live. Now, if you can't type out all your answers today, you can do that throughout the week and submit it. But what I like to do is to go over some of the concept with you. I have on my table hardware and laptops that I have open. So there will be part that I will switch camera to show you the tools and the components. So this is like the most effective way that I found to be hosting Zoom for class. Okay. So I'm going to get into screen share, and then there will be time that I will switch camera. So every week I will release notes to you. So that way you don't have to purchase the textbook, but if you wish to purchase the textbook, you can. So this week we are going to mainly hit laptop repair, because now, as you know, mostly everybody is working virtually, whether it's for business or you are learning for school online. So what you're going to see is a lot of people have complications with laptop, especially in the PC area. And then some people, they would opt to purchase a MacBook. And Apple systems is a slightly different in the case where, when you do maintenance, you have to make sure that it's no longer under the warranty. And then also you have to refer to the Apple Genius, which is their technicians. Some of the older Apple system, you can actually troubleshoot because a lot of the components are not soldered in. The newer systems, the processor, everything else is soldered in. And in order to open Apple system, you need specific tools. So we get a little bit more into that in the next week when we talk about more mobile device troubleshooting compared to desktop troubleshooting. So today we're going to hit laptop, and in general, we're going to target Windows-based laptop, which is PC. Many laptops would use proprietary components while others use the general components. Some of the proprietary components, what do we mean by proprietary? It's made by a certain manufacturer and it's used by that manufacturer only. So in that case, you have to buy the replacement part from them. Some things like hard drive, optical drive, system board. And if you're not familiar with this yet, we'll get into some of that in the next few pages. So the things that you need to focus on when you're working with computing system is the components inside that system. And sometimes that could be external component, right? Like a DVD burner that's externally plugged in. And so when we look at the components, we will look at the type of components, the specific model, the specification, so that way we can replace equivalent or better. So whenever you do replacement, you need to look at what you can replace as equivalent or better. Okay. The second area that we need to look at is power source. And when we work with laptop, that's mainly the battery. So as I am holding some things in front of me here, so this is an MSI book. And the battery for this comes attached in the back, and it should have the two levers on the right to detach. Some laptop would have the battery built inside, so you have to remove the back panel in order to take out the battery. And HP does this on some of their model. So if you're looking at a very thin laptop, right, the 3-in-1 or 2-in-1 tablet-based laptop, you might see that the battery is actually inside underneath the actual back panel cover. So now the battery would come with the AC adapter, which allows us to plug into our socket to adapt, right, power to charge the battery. And the common thing with AC adapter is that sometimes, the AC adapter can go bad where you have to replace that. Or in some cases with the older laptop where it's using older technology for battery, if the battery charging cycle get lessened over time and it's no longer charged. So in some cases, people will tell you, oh, I have a laptop, but it doesn't work because my battery is dead. And simply we can take a look at to test the battery, or we can see if we can replace the battery if it fails to test. So now there are some universal replacement AC adapter to charge the laptop, but those tend to, they have 50% chance of really working. Some are better than other, while some are not all that great, right? So what we want to do is we want to investigate before we replace any component, before we replace any components for our laptop. So the best practices before we get into the tools, we want to talk about the best practices, okay? Before you open any component and take out any components on a laptop, you should refer to manufacturer documentation. And you usually would find this on their website by inputting the model of that laptop. For example, if I purchase a Dell or I'm fixing a Dell, right? Dell would have the support section, and they would have some kind of manual documentation for that particular laptop. Or even Lenovo, right? Asus, HP. And you would be able to look at the documentation first before we start opening it up. Another thing that I want to bring up, I hear this in one of the breakout room, is that one of the students mentioned that you should take a picture or record a video of your component before you open it. And that's important because now everybody have a smartphone. So when you open it, you should take notes of where the screws are located, what type of screws, or if you want to label those screws so that way you can put it back in place without, mismatching the screws. Also the position of the components and the, whether it's a battery, whether it's a hard drive. So it helps as you go through each of the steps in troubleshooting, you should take a picture as a form of documentation and also take notes, right? Sometimes I would use Post-it notes to kind of label things sometimes I would have a little notepad, or I can type it in my phone and, you know, take notes of where each of the components would be or what it would look like. Okay, so the best practice they tell you here is to refer to the documentation to get some guidance there, and also to use appropriate hand tools and other tools. So I listed some of the general tools. So we would have an anti-static wrist strap, and these come, you know, you can purchase this at a computer store like Micro Center, right, in Orange County. I know that sometimes Best Buy carries it, but you can also find it online like Amazon, and they come in a few dollars, $5 sometimes, or even cheaper. And when you use the anti-static wrist strap, let me get it real quick so I can show you. You need to attach one of its ends to a metal surface. So if you're opening up a system, and if you can find, like, for example, if I'm working on a desktop, I can clip it to its case. So normally they would come with a Velcro strip like this, right? And then you simply just put it on your wrist. You can use either right or left hand. Then you would attach the clipper part to your wrist strap, and this alligator clip goes to a metal surface. So especially if you're working in a room that has carpeted area, you gotta make sure that you are grounded. Bare floor is the best. Okay, so remember that when you work with electronic equipment, we want to work on bare floor because our ground is grounded. It's, you know, so tile surfaces or bare floor is the best. Okay. Now we want to prevent ESD, which is electrical static discharge. And for our local area in Inland Empire, we generally have a very dry weather, and there's a lot of electrostatic, right? So what you want is you want to make sure that you de-static yourself by using the wrist strap. And you don't have to have, you know, the whole set of tools, but when I bought my set of tools, it came with it. Now you can buy this separately on its own for a few dollars. Now, if you don't have this, what can you do? You can touch a metal surface before you start touching computer components. Or what you can do is, if your components, like this motherboard, it comes with a bag, and this is an anti-static bag. So before you touch the component, what you can do is you can touch inside the bag to remove the static. Okay, so to discharge the static. So that's one way that you can do it as well. Okay, so we should have non-magnetic screwdrivers. I know that there are a lot of stores that sell magnetic-based screwdrivers for very affordable price, but you can ask or you can look for screwdrivers that would be non-magnetic. Okay, now screwdrivers come in all different types, right? You can get one which is the Phillips. I normally would have a flathead so that I can you know, remove things quickly or pop the case quickly. And then you would need, if you're using detachable components like, or a tool like this, you would have different bits, right? Different sizes. So the set that I got is about $25, and you can find different types or even cheaper, about $20, and it's a complete set. It comes with additional tools. Some comes with you know, mobile devices, you know, tools as well, right? And it all can vary. But in general, we need screwdriver. We need ways to de-static ourselves. And you would need some form of pliers. And this is for removing components and cutting, or tweezers. So the set that I purchased, It comes with the needle nose, right, and other types of pliers, but this is very helpful when you're trying to remove, especially when you're working with electrical components outside of the computers even, okay? Now, if you plan to do networking with your job, then that's the next class, but you would want to add the networking tools with it, like cable cutter, cable stripper, and also cable tester. I found that it's useful to have, I found that it's useful to have a small flashlight, and now on our phone, there's a flashlight feature, so you can use that as well. So that will be also good to have as part of your toolbox. Now this, you can find Voltmeter for approximately $10, and Voltmeter is good when we're testing battery. And let me see if I can. So voltmeters would look something like this, right? And especially when we're testing electrical components or even outlets, right? So you can use voltmeters for a lot of different things. So this one, I think I purchased it for about $10 on Amazon. Now, I don't use postcard anymore, but postcards is important because all the computer, all PC would have some kind of beep codes, and we can use that to diagnose in case if there's some short circuit issues for boards or components. But postcards is also recommended, and you can find them. Okay. In my general experience, I found that docking or data recovery type of station helps, because a lot of the people will bring in computers with broken or dead hard drives, and then they would ask the technician to extract data from that drive. So this one is a docking station for drive. So when you remove the internal hard drive, you can actually put it in here, and the station itself is connected via USB. So you can, in cases we would use software to be able to read the files on that drive, okay? Or let's say that you upgrade a hard drive, right? You need to transfer, and you know, you can do this after you transfer. You want to transfer all your data from one drive to another. And this one you can, it's docked for 3.5, which is your general desktop hard drive. That's a 3.5 inches. Okay, so this is a SATA drive, and we'll talk about hard drive in a little bit. Or you can use it for laptop hard drive, which is smaller because they're more compact. So 2.5 in general is for laptop, and then the 3.5, right, is for desktop. So when you buy a docking station, make sure that it's compatible and make sure that it's USB capable. And this one can use 3.0. So this one, approximately, you can find them for $30 or even less. Okay. Now you don't have to have it, but you will find that it will be useful in general for data recovery. And then you would get a USB network adapter, because when we're installing operating system or when we're upgrading system, we might need to connect to the internet. And in some cases, your devices haven't been working yet. Your Ethernet adapter locally is not configured yet. So if you plug in USB devices are plug and play, meaning that they have firmware that's already installed inside. So it should launch and be able to connect to you so you can download specific driver for the system. So these are some of the recommended tools I found throughout my years of experience. I found them useful. And you can add more to it as you go along, but you can start with screwdriver, flashlight, and then, you know, I would also obtain a small container, and you can find any small container. Like, for example, you can use the medicine container, right? You can find them at a dollar store. Dollar store is great for like little knickknacks, right? So the screw container would be something like this, so that way you can label it, right? Especially with laptops, they come with very small, different size screws. So we want to make sure that we have some kind of container to secure. Many cases when I get laptop from people to fix, it's missing screws, right? It's loose because, you know, the previous person who helped fixing that system didn't put in all the screws, they lost the screws. So screw containers is also essential. And then we want to have small screwdrivers, right? Like the ones for the smaller repair. In some cases, you've seen these, they sell them for like glasses and different things. So you can find those for very affordable. Now, the cheaper the screwdriver, sometimes those will strip. And when you're working with strip screws, you can use super glue. So you would put the glue into the screw top, and then you would stand your screwdriver on top and wait for it to dry a little bit, and you can see if you can rotate it. That's one of the most common technique that you would find in the field for a lot of the technicians. So that would be a little tip for you, okay? And as I mentioned, you want to take photos of different stages. You want to make notes of cables, screws, component positions, as we mentioned. And what I also have, I'm going to switch camera real quick so I can show you guys, is, let me stop sharing real quick. So I also have the mats. So what I did was I also bought anti-static mats, and they come in various sizes. They run about $20. And as you can see, I clipped it to the side of the laptop, which is metal, right? Because I'm using a wood table. And so what you can do is you can also get the mats if you wish. Okay. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I would like to ask the toolkit that you showed us, how many pieces did it have?
This one has 45 pieces, and it's, let me get back to the main camera, and it's called Rosewell. I got it a while back, years ago, when I was teaching at other places.
Yeah, I found it. I just,
Yeah.
there's
And
like
then
3 pieces, yeah.
Yeah, and then Moreno Valley College, actually, we built a really nice computer classroom in Parkside Complex 16. And within it, I have tools that were equipped for classes like this, but we can't use it right now. However, they bought the one that has 97 pieces, that has all the mobile too. And that one runs a little bit higher, a few dollars more, but you can also get those. And normally they come with the, you know, the hand tool, and then you can add in the bits. So this one is less, but I've used Rosewell in the past for cases and other things. So, you know, that's one of the brand that I normally go to.
Yeah, I found it, so I just wanted it because there were different pieces. So
Yes.
that one's the middle one, so that one's good. Okay.
Yes. And you don't have to start out with a very large set of tools. That's great if you can. If not, you can even go to like Home Depot and start picking out some of your tools, put together. I actually have their orange toolbox that I put things in, like electrical tape, Velcros, you know, zip tie. That's really important too, because we want to tie up the cable sometimes.
Okay.
So little things you can add over time as you need. So when I fix people's desktop, I like to clean up their cable, do cable management, so it's not intervening with other components. Okay, so as we go through this, what we want to do is we want to also answer the question in our assignments, and I'm going to try to do it as much as I can today. We'll take a little bit of a break at about 2, so you can get some, you know, a snack or something, and then come back, and then we'll continue. Okay, so let me go back to screen share. So, as we get into the back part of the laptop, most of the time, right, we would see the covers like this. So, and many laptops come in different layout. So we want to look at the documentation, also start with learning the positions of the laptop. The manual gives you, you know, where everything should be laid out as well. The first thing that you should do is you should remove the battery, and you need to remove it and let it sit because you want to drain it. You don't know when it was last charged. You don't know when they turn this laptop on, so make sure that you remove the electrical source. The power supply for the laptop is the battery. And as I mentioned before, right, I showed you one. So here is one of my old Sony. This one was old. It's very old, so it weighs a ton, right? So as you can see, the battery is in the back here, and usually it would have a slider, right, to detach and attach, to lock and unlock, okay? And normally you would also see information on the battery itself, right? Like who makes that battery, the model of the battery. So if you need to replace the battery, this is the good information to have. What if they don't have this label, right? Then you have to go to the website and research, okay? Now, some HP and Dell would have the battery underneath the cover. So what you have to do is you have to remove the cover and then see the battery, okay? And you see this more in tablet and some of the more, you know, mobile devices like smartphones and such. Okay, so let me open up my assignment real quick, and so I can help you answer some of the questions. All right, so in the first question it asks, identify the input and the output devices on a common laptop. Input devices are the components that you use to enter the information into the system, right? Like keyboard, you type information into the computer. Touchpad, right? Like you would select certain item by touching the touchpad on your laptop. Touch screen, that's very common now. So I'm using a touchscreen laptop. So I can select by touching the screen, or I can move things around. So it's taking input from the user, okay? Another one would be scanner, right? Like if you have the printer, scanner, fax all in one. So you can scan information into the system. All right, what's another one? A microphone, right? You can sing and record your voice. Okay, so this list can go on more and more. So for our quiz, we want to identify different components, different devices that would be input or output. And in some cases, it will be both, right? We can take information from it, and we can also input information into it. We can output and input together. So example, right? Like a DVD burner. Some of you will know what that is, and some of you are too young to know what that is, right? So we would have a device that would be able to take our songs and movies from our computer and then put it on the DVD or Blu-ray or CD, right? Though the burners are both, because it's able to take the data from the computer and put it on disk, or we can take the data from the disk and put it back into the computer. So it's both input and output. Now the output only would be a screen. Like let's say if you're looking at the TV monitor, right? It's only outputting picture, okay? Now, if you have just a monitor alone, a screen alone is just the output. But if it's a touch screen, it becomes input and output. Okay, so this one is actually both I/O. The speaker, you can hear sound from the computer, so that will be an output. External drive, right? I consider this both because it depends. If you're looking at like USB storage, right? You can take the data from the computer and you can put it back into the computer. So it's both I/O, okay? So there are a lot of different things that we use every day. And in general, the concept with the computing system, since they, you know, they really built the concept since the 40s, right? And they said that the computer should have storage, the computer should have input, the computer should have output, right? And the computer should have processing capability. So with all those 4 components, that's what we're still using today. If you're looking at your smartphone, right, you type your text messages, that's input on the virtual keyboard, right? You're looking at your screen when you're reading news on your smartphone, that's output, right? You have a processor like A8 or A10. If you're using like, you know, iPhone, or if you're using Android, right? So you have these, and you would have storage like, you know, your internal storage, and then also your SD. I use an Android system, so as a smartphone, so I use an SD to store like additional data, like pictures, video, right, voice recording. Okay, so for our quiz and for this class, we need to know what's the difference between input and output. Now, the power source of the laptop, we mentioned that that's the battery. We need to unplug that for safety because you don't want to get shocked. And on the desktop, we want to unplug. And then in the desktop, in the back, there's a switch on off. So make sure that you turn it to off, let it drain for a minute, and then you can start de-static yourself and touching the case, and then you can get into it, okay? So we want to remove the battery, detach that first. For the next question, number 3, it says, what should you do before beginning repairing the laptop? We mentioned that we unplug and remove the battery. We wanted to look at the documentation before we start. So now if you don't, what will happen is you're going to go in circles sometimes, right? You're going to run into issues when you open it up without knowing where everything is, right? You might damage other components that was still working. So we want to make sure that we research carefully. Okay. Now, where do I get the documentation? So for question 4, it gives you the scenario. Since a client asks you to repair a laptop, Lenovo T470, right, Type 20 HD. This is an actual laptop. Where can you locate its manual? So you would visit Lenovo website, you would look at the support section if there's one, or you would search for that model, and then it will bring you information about that system. So we can see the specification, what kind of drive came with it, what kind of, you know, processor came with it, the memory, or, you know, the client can simply ask you to upgrade the memory. So you have that information there. You can look at the manual where that memory is actually located. So when you open up the panel, you're not opening different places and waste your time, right? On average, technician that fix your computer, I'm not talking about Best Buy because Best Buy pay their people a certain rate. But let's say you go to a private place, right? They normally charge, you know, $70 and up per hour, sometimes 100 something an hour. It depends, right? If it's an emergency and you need it right away and you want it within 2 hours, they're going to charge quite a bit. So we want to make sure that we use our time effectively, right? So if you have information there, you're not wasting time looking around. And then we talk about tools. So what type of tools do you use to repair? We talk about screwdrivers for different size screws. Talk about flashlight because sometimes, especially in the desktop, you might need to get into small dark places in the corner so you can shine a light so that way you don't drop screws on different areas of the system. You want to use anti-static wrist strap if you can find one. If not, you touch the metal case or touch metal surface and make sure you work on bare floor. You will want to use anti-static mats. And I find it useful to have screw container and other components. So you can add more to it, but those are some of the basics, right? USB storage sometimes comes handy because you can download something from another system and then plug it in. Any questions so far as question 1 through 5 that we addressed? Please feel free to stop and ask if you have questions. And for 6, why do you want to document and label components before removing or replacing the components? Right? It would help. For me, I personally feel that it helped me how to reassemble it back. Because when you're excited, you start tearing everything apart and then you forget, right, where everything goes, right, which screw goes where, how it should be plugged back in, you know, and sometimes you might install things backward and then you have to fix it again. So take a picture, make notes, make sure we label, and that's a good practice. Okay? So hopefully throughout this class and also after this class, you would start, you know, going back to some of the old systems that you thought that was broken. Maybe you can fix it and get it working again, give it to your kids, or, you know, you can use it again for other purposes. And it's a good way that we can just, you know, recycle some of these things. So when they recycle, a lot of the time they part out these metal and they sell metal to different company. Especially boards have gold and silver and copper, so they melt it down and they sell it. And so we can revamp some of our system and be able to use it. All right. Any question? Okay, I'm going to switch back to notes. And let's take a look at the label of this real quick. Right? In this particular model, it gives you some of the layout, right? We know that this, usually you would see a cover for where the drive and the wireless adapter would be. And a lot of the times it also ties back to the side panel right here of the system, because when you plug things in, it needs to be able to read. So a lot of the times you would see a lot of the adapters locating up here along with the hard drive. Okay. Now I'm going to switch camera. I'm going to show you on the one that I opened on how it would be. Okay. So you see that? That's the hard drive right there. Okay. And what I did was I opened the panel for this guy already, right? So the hard drive is located there. And here's the connection. This is the SATA. We'll talk about different types. Okay. The memory are these right here. Notice that it uses a small outline dual inline memory module. We call this SO-DIMM, as in the notes. And when it's ejected or when it's lifted, that means it's not installed. So there's a lever on the side right here where you would see on how it would, when you push it down, it would clip in. See that? That's when it's properly laid out. See that? Okay. And then you would use this lever to lift it up. And on the memory itself, you would have a label. Normally on the smaller ones, they might just have the model number. So you have to also research on the size of the memory, right? But all laptop uses SO-DIMM memory module or memory card, which means that they're smaller. And these are the chips on the memory, and the gold connectors connect to that, okay? So the memory should lay flat, and there would be a cover, which is this right here, see? That goes to cover it. So when I unscrew it, when I lift this up on this particular board, the memory is located here. Sometimes you would see them in the middle, right? But typically the drive would have like its own panel and it's larger. On the picture, it's in the middle, but on this one, it's in the back. So I have to look at, you know, the Acer. So this is an Acer. Okay. All right. The processor is here. Okay. And when I took the processor apart, right, the top, this is called a heat sink. What it does is it absorbs all the heat and it will connect this to the fan, which is this part right here. You see the fan? Oops, sorry, my hand's in the way. That's the fan. Okay. And when you service parts, make sure that you also clean it. See how this is dusty? I got this from somebody that donated this to me for my class. But so how do you clean the fan? Any idea?
Can we just use like those air sprayer things
air
that you clean a keyboard?
Compressed air can, sure. So if you have a compressor system at your home, you can use that, but just be careful. Don't blow directly too close to it because that can detach things, right? Because it's too strong. I tell my students I use blow dryer, right? It's good enough to clean some of the dust out, and that works for me. So I recommend it. You know, you can take it outside or into your garage, and then you can have full blast cool, and then you can blow it out, and that works for me too, because I don't have a compressed air system. And if you can't find the can because store closes early now, right, you can also use that as everyday household item. Most people have it. So that's what I would use. So the processor needs a heat sink to kind of absorb the heat. And you notice on top, there's a little paste that goes on top, right? And what that does is it also absorbs heat, and that paste, right, would go here. So it would be like an adhesive almost, but it also acts as a coolant for the processor because it runs very hot. If you ever notice, you turn on your laptop right after, you know, the fan will kick in. We want to keep it cool because it's very compact. Okay. Do you have any questions so far? And the screws would go around that. Now, replacing the processor, we simply have to detach the heatsink, and then we'll take out the processor. And when you install the processor, be careful with the pin when you sit it onto the socket. That's what we call a socket. And we'll get more into processor type and such. But if you bend the pin, there goes your processor. Because, you know, now if you're looking at like the i9, it can go up to almost $2,000. And then if we bend the pin, we basically ruin our processor, and they won't take it back if it's bent pin, right? So, or the Ryzen AMD. And a lot of people, you know, they would upgrade memory or hard drive first before they start upgrading processor because you have to make sure it's compatible. All right, so any question?
How often do you find that you have to replace the thermal paste?
Whenever you replace the processor, you have to replace thermal paste. On average, most of the time I see the lifespan of a laptop is about 5 years. Business-wise, they upgrade system 3 to 5 years. That's with regular use. Like really extensive use is 3 years refresh. So when I first started out of college, I operated as a field technician, and I contracted with, you know, a lot of national companies where they sent me to different places to service. And I did a lot of refresh for people back then. So for example, if you ever go to Costco contracted with Xerox, and Xerox technician, they come out whenever, you know, their system is down. So, and so when we plan out for businesses, we would be 3 to 5 years. Now, some company, they would upgrade internal components versus replacing everything, or if it's cheaper to replace. So whenever you upgrade processor, you should clean up the thermal paste. And a good way to clean it up is with rubbing alcohol. Do not use cotton because cotton has fiber and it gets everywhere. What you should use is coffee filter, because coffee filter is absorbent and it's not fibrous.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, people use Q-tips sometimes. I'm fine with Q-tips. I just try to avoid cotton-based, lint-based type of material. So rubbing alcohol works really good at cleaning. Arctic Silver is one of the brand that you can find. That the paste is called thermal paste, right? You can find generic brand that works just as well. All you need is a pea size. For laptop, even less than that, half of a pea size, tiny dab. And I normally take a business card and I spread it so that way it's even. If you put it in the middle and you squish it down, sometimes it oozes over and that ruins your board. So we want to make sure that it's kind of like grouting tiles. You spread it even and then, you know, make sure that it doesn't ooze over. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So where can we find the model of the laptop? A lot of times you would find it in the label on the back, or when you open up the laptop. Now, the newer laptops, sometimes that they don't put the model there, so you would have to do a little bit of research. But a lot of times you would find a little label. It would say Intel inside or AMD inside, and then the model would be like HP and a number. So that's where you would find Rochelle. Okay. Next, let me get back to screen share here. Okay, so we touch on safety, we touch on tools. So here is the same picture, right, with the panel open. So we're gonna start labeling things now. I wanna make sure that when you kind of have a general idea of what everything should look like, okay? So this one right here, as you saw on my laptop already, this one is a hard disk or a hard drive, right? So you can put down one is hard disk or hard drive, and they come in different types. The older system, you would see them as hard disk drive, HDD. Other newer systems, you would see them as solid state drive, SSD, or sometimes hybrid solid state drive, HSD. So now on the drive itself, you would see information about that drive. And on the laptop, we use the 2.5 inch, okay? So if you're thinking of replacing your drive, you would consider looking at the 2.5. So I'm gonna hold this up so you can see. This came from the Acer, right? So you would see a label like this and it would tell you the manufacturer who makes the drive. It doesn't necessarily be Acer, because Acer buy drives from another company. This one says Toshiba. HDD, which means it's hard disk drive. That means that the mechanical platter spins, and in a lot of cases HDD fail because of the mechanism inside the drive, right? If it had head crash, or in some cases on the software side, people download malware and it destroyed their drive. So, and a lot of the times it will tell you the size of the drive. So this one, in a very small print, it says 160 gigabyte. Okay, sometimes you would have 1 terabyte. So the larger the capacity on this just means that the more data you're gonna hold. Okay, and then the model number, sometimes it will tell you, right, like information about cylinder and head. So this is for a desktop, which is larger. So I'm gonna hold it up so you guys can see. Okay, much smaller on the laptop. This is a 3.5, And this one is a WD, a Western Digital, it's a very common brand, right? And it also tells you the model, the size. Sometimes it'll tell you the RPM on here, okay? And then this one tells you the voltage, the electrical requirement for it. Every components require electrical sources, so that's why we can calculate out the power supply when we work with desktop. And it tells you the type SATA. SATA means that it would be the interface, the connection, and how we would physically connect it. Serial ATA, it uses a specific cable. So I'll open a desktop next week, and then I'll show you how to do desktop next week. Okay, any question? Okay, so we talk about drive. That's number one. Okay, for number two, this card right here is a wireless adapter. You can say wireless card or wireless adapter. And that allows us to connect the system to the network, right? Like your home network or your business network. All laptops come equipped with this. But if you're looking at like, you know, the laptop in the late 90s going into 2000, right? Early 2000, a lot of the times people have to buy external adapter or install a replacement to their adapter, because back then we were still using modem to dial up, and you know, wireless is very minimal. Now it's very common, so you would have a wireless adapter. Some wireless adapter would be closer to the front, the back of the monitor, so you would see that there, but this one is positioned right here. And then this is for memory, SODIMM. SODIMM stands for Small Outline Dual Inline Memory Module. If you test for the A+, they ask for that. Small Outline Dual Inline Memory Module. So when we say dual inline memory module, what do we mean? We mean that we need to pair our memory modules. You install in pair. And you, by practice, ideally you would have equivalent in size. So when you shop around for a laptop, a lot of the times it will tell you, you know, this is the processor, this is the hard drive, and this is the amount of memory or RAM that it has, 16 gigabytes. So that means that most of the time, right, they would use 2 cards that are 8 gigabyte each to add up to be 16. If they're using 1 card, that would just be a simple 1 card, 1 gigabyte. Then you can add another one with 16 to give you 32 gigabyte. So we want to always pair, we want them to parallel. Because when your data is written on the RAM, it writes across both. It goes dual channel, so it goes between the two. So we want to pair them up. Okay, and then for 4 is up here. This one has a CMOS battery. This CMOS battery, its job is to retain information for all the components. It's like for, you know, it lists all the components in the system, and the operating system, it needs that in order to really run the beginning processes to start. Like what hard drive is there, what motherboard is there, what processor it's using, and so forth. It's also a way that we can maintain our system time. So whenever you see a laptop that has wrong time, like I turn it on and I didn't purposely change it, right? Like I used it a week ago and now I turn it on and it shows like it's 4 hours behind or 2 hours behind. That means that the battery for that laptop, the CMOS battery, complementary metal oxide, that looks like a watch battery, right? It's common in desktop, that battery is going, okay? And without that, your system cannot have that information, because some of the components was volatile. It needs a little bit of the power source to retain the information that the manufacturer has programmed. Okay, so 4 is CMOS battery. That's different than your laptop power-based battery, right? Which is much higher in voltage. This one is like, it looks like a watch battery, and they would use a specific model. Sometimes you can find them at the dollar store. You can find them in general most stores like Walmart, Target, you know, even Home Depot. Then for 5, we already know that that's the main battery for the laptop. Okay. So I'm going to try to finish a few more questions, and then we'll give you a little break. Right? You can just leave on mute and then take a little break, and then we'll come back. Okay. So for I'm going to switch back to notes real quick to give you some information. So this is the picture, same information as in our assignment. This is on page 3 of our notes. And what I did was I write down all the steps. And if you purchase that textbook has all the steps too for troubleshooting. So now when we're replacing keyboard, and this is very common, you get a laptop with broken keys, like keys are missing, right? Or people spill things on the laptop because they drink coffee while they work, or beverages, right? Or eat. And what happened is when liquid gets in through the keyboard into the motherboard and other components, right, it gets damaged, okay? So sometimes you have to replace the keyboard itself. So first you need to remove the battery. Then you need to remove the screws that hold the keyboard in place. Some laptop, you will be able to access it from the bottom, but very few. Most of them, you have to remove the top panel. That means that you have to detach the screen, right? And then pop the top panel up, and you will be able to replace it. Okay. Sometimes you can just clean the keyboard itself, right? We can use rubbing alcohol or some kind of like, you know, on a regular keyboard on motherboard, like for desktop, I simply rinse it with water. You don't need soap. You can put it into dishwasher with the short rinse cycle, right? I also tried washing machine with the spin cycle, just rinse out with water. I put a towel out, I lay it out in the sun. When it's completely dry for a day, I plug it back in and it works. So that's one way to get rid of all your sticky keys, all the things that spills inside the keys, if you don't have the patience to go through with the Q-tip. So once you remove the panel, there will be a bezel that holds it. So you have to pop that up and then lift the keyboard, but the cable would look like this. It has a ribbon cable. If this gets detached or damaged, your keyboard is not functioning. So when you troubleshoot a laptop that has, you know, when you type it and nothing works, it's either because it's loose or it's damaged, right? So when you replace, now the keyboard replacement, sometimes you have to look at, you know, to obtain the part from the manufacturer. Okay. And then once you install it, you got to test it and make sure it works after you plug everything back in, right? So make sure that it's working again. Any question? So let's answer the next question for 8. I'll do 9 and 10, and then we will take a break. So disconnect the laptop from AC power, meaning unplug it from the socket or the surge protector. Always use your surge protector with your mobile devices or any system, right? We'll talk about surge protector. Remove the battery, let it drain, and then you can start opening the panels to remove the keyboard from its bezel. So Now, after it talks about keyboard replacement, it goes into hard disk drive. So your most laptop, as we know, comes with 2.5. Now the picture I showed here, and also my hard drive from the Acer laptop that I acquired, this is a 2.5, much smaller than the regular drive. Now, when you're talking about hard disk drive, see, once the drive is open like this, it's no longer good for us to use. They can take it into the lab and take out the platter and evaluate. So I teach a computer forensic class, and we talk about how in crime cases where data can be extracted, right? And I've, seen and read also cases where people, run over a smartphone with their cars and they still were able to pull data from that phone, or they would try to damage a hard drive because there would be incriminating information on there. They can take it into the clean lab, open this up in a clean room environment, and take this out and be able to read it. Now, we don't have those type of tools because they're very expensive, but what we can do is, make sure that the drive is intact. And when you handle the drive, if it's usable, do not touch this board right here, right? Handle it from the side, okay? So when you install, try not to touch it, because even if you wash your hands have oil and possible dirt that would damage the actual main board of the drive. It needs this to really identify itself with the system, okay? The cable would go back here, and the same thing with on the laptop one, a lot of the time it comes with a little case, or it has like a place where you can slide it in and screw it in. So the cable attachment would be back here. So let's talk about the internal. So the platter have sectors, and that all your data is written to sectors. So think of it like little pieces of pie that gets divided on this platter. The spindle motor is what spins the actual platter, along with your VCM actuator. That's the main motor for the drive. So when you're hearing a drive that's squealing and squeaking and it's making noise, possibly that it's getting damaged because of the mechanical components. That's why HDD is going out, because it's just, manufacturing costs a lot more, and it's doesn't last very long. Okay. So after a few years, if it's being regularly used, sometimes it's just produced badly, like they just created it with malfunctioning. And then the pivot on here allows this read and write head to actually read the data on the actual platter. Now, when you have head crash, this read write head never touches the platter. So if you think about like, records, and you have a needle on the record and the record spin, it doesn't really touch the platter that way, right? It reads it with the laser. So when it never touches, so when it touches, it causes damage, and the damage would, sometimes you would hear the scraping noise from it, and that damage would create loss of data or even stop working on the drive. Okay, so our hard disk drive is consisted of that component, and then the connector, that's where we plug in the cable. And every single drive needs to have two connections. The large one for the data, the SATA, it has the L shape, upside down L, and the large L shape is for data, okay? And then the small L shape is for power. It needs power in order to mechanically move the platter, right? And also we want the data connection so that way we can write and read from the drive. Now, even on some solid state, you need to, if it's using SATA solid state, then you need to connect it both. Okay, both connections needs to be established. For solid state, the best that you can get right now, right? It's fast. It's you know, somewhat affordable. It's a lot cheaper than what it was before, and it comes in multiple flavors. So you see the HP here, it still uses SATA connection, but it uses flash memory. So very much like your USB flash drive or your SD card. There's no mechanical movement, right? There's chips that's, you know, recording the data that's inside. So it acts like memory, like flash memory, but we still need to connect it. And then this flavor, this version of it is the M.2. It goes into one of the slot on the motherboard, and it has a specific slot for it. It doesn't, you can't just plug it into any slot. It has a specific slot called the M.2. Most new motherboard comes with it now. Okay. And so those are the solid states.
A question
Yes.
about what year did this, that the one on the left, that you can start putting those into computers?
It came out about 3-4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, and it got really popular in the last 3 years.
Thank
So so to be sure, right, open up your computer and take a look. If it looks like the other hard drive, right, that means that you have, and also in BIOS it tells you that, right? In if you're using Windows in Device Manager, it'll tell you what kind of drive it is. So your OS is really good at recognizing what kind of drive that you're working with. Okay, so solid state. And I forgot to mention that on the hard disk drive, the RPM makes a difference, right? On the older ones, you would see 5,600 RPM, and on the newer one, if it spins faster, it's 7,200 RPM. So just the platter for the rotation per minute is quicker. And it would have additional feature like for caching and page filing and then error correction. So we'll get more in depth with that later on. Okay. And then you would have a hybrid, which is both. And some laptops come with this. It's a way that they save money, is that it would come with the solid state cache. It's like a half and half the way they made it. So it will be like, let's say that you buy this drive that's 500 gig. So 250 gig would be solid state, and then that will be flash memory technology. And then the other half would be, you know, HDD technology. So you do save a little bit of money on this. I feel that, you know, not so much of a saving because SSD is very popular now in production. It's supply and demand. We have more of a supply now, so you do see that the price is pretty close. But if you want to save, you know, a little bit of money, you can take a look at this option. And most of them will come with SATA connection, serial ATA, which is the L-shaped connection that I showed you. Okay, so that would be one option. So as I showed you, right, we removed the panel after we removed the battery. There would be a location where this drive's gonna go, and it would be screwed in. So before you replace the drive, you're gonna make sure that you unscrewed it, and then there would be a housing around it. So you gotta unscrew the screw around the housing in order to insert the drive and then plug it in. And here are some of the steps. Okay. And then mounting screw holes, it shows you step by step. Some of them would have a sleeve or some housing around it. All of them usually do to protect it for the laptop. Okay. And then we will get into RAM, but RAM is, you know, it is a chapter on its own. So this is just the brief explanation, and we'll get further in depth. So we learned that for number 9, solid state drive is going to give you the best performance. It's fast, it's reliable. Cost wise, it's really, you know, it depends on when you buy it. sometimes they have an earthquake in Thailand, and Western Digital, they produce a lot of stuff there, then it drives up the cost. Sometimes, you know, they would cut back production and then it drives up the cost. So it fluctuates throughout. Same thing with RAM. And the type of RAM module that we would use for laptop is the smaller card, and that's so small outline dual inline memory module that's so thin. And the capacity wise, how much it holds is really determined based on, you know, your existing, you want to upgrade equivalent or better. So if you have 8 gig right now, you want to consider going 16 gig or even higher, like 32 gig. That's decent. So for most basic usage, 8 gigs or higher is good. Your OS for Windows 10 now, and most of the operating system just require about, you know, 4 gigs. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna give you about 10-minute break so you can, you know, get some water, go to the restroom or something, and then we'll meet back up. So it's about 2:11 on my computer clock. So we'll meet back up in about 10 minutes. So I'll just put my video on mute. You can do so too if you like, and then take a little break. Okay? All right, so I'm gonna stop so you can break.
Hello, Professor. I have a question, Professor. If the hard drive is corrupted, it can be fixed or just need to replace a new hard drive.
So if it's corrupted and have you ever taken it apart? I mean, like remove it from the system?
Yes, Professor, because my old laptop is not working, and then I tried to remove the hard drive, and then I have a reader, and then it could not be open to the other computer, and then so it means corrupted or.
Yeah, so you will likely have to replace the drive.
Mhm.
There are some software tools that can actually look at pieces of data if it's still readable, but if it's broken inside, it won't spin or it won't be able to access the platter, then likely that drive is gone. HDD has that issue, so you can find either a replacement equal in size, or you can go a little bit bigger. So if it's a SATA drive, you can fairly find those for affordable price. Even with a terabyte, you can find them for about $50 now.
And how about the data, Professor? I could not retrieve my data anymore.
Right. So you have to use either recovery software tools to be able to do that. I'll share with you some of the tools that you might be able to use. And it's a hit or miss on some of these software tools because, on average, you get, sometimes you don't even get a high percentage of data recovery. In the forensic environment, a lot of the times they would have the reader, the actual system, that they can take it apart and read it. And those people, they tend to charge a couple $100 an hour on average. So it's very expensive.
It's very expensive, Professor.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, if you already plug into like a docking station to read your drive and it's not readable,
Yes.
I can send you some information, or I can give you some link on what kind of software tool that you can use. And you can try it with another computer, of course, but it's not guaranteed that you're going to be able to get all of that. So the important part is always back up your data to the cloud, and then that way you always have it. So if you set up like a OneDrive, you can always drag your drive there, your data there, or you use Google Drive. So and then they have other services that you can also acquire, like you can use Dropbox as well. But then when you put your data on there, it's on somebody else's system, and so technically, you have access to it, but it's on their system. You know what I mean? So there's some privacy concern relating to that.
Okay. But I will try. I will try the link that you're gonna send, Professor, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I will send you some free software tool, and you can try it, and then you let me know.
Okay, thanks, Professor.
Yeah. So I think we'll start back up.
Before we continue, you had mentioned that the certificate was good for about 3 years. What's the renewal process like?
The certification for A+ is good for 3 years. You would need to either retest if you don't do continuation credit. So CompTIA A+ allows you to do continuation credit, meaning training, and you would have to apply for those units through them. You can always sign up for membership as a student for free. And with the student membership, you get about $100 discount for the test. And on average, CompTIA certification runs at least $250 and up. So for CompTIA A+ with the discount, you're looking at approximately $250. And we are a CompTIA partner. I will be setting up the test center. We couldn't get the institution license for CompTIA through our grant, our Perkins Fund, but we do have other certifications that are closely with Microsoft and other vendor. So yeah, but A+ is a good place to start for the IT. Okay, so I'm back. I hope everybody can join back from our little break, and then we'll continue. So we wanted to be able to address some of the concept with you here. Okay, I'm gonna get back into screen share, and then we'll talk about a little bit of insulation as well. So for question 11, it asks you, if a client purchased a laptop Dell Latitude 5400, which includes 4 GB of DDR4 2400, she wants to upgrade the memory to a higher capacity for her business applications. What's your recommendation? So before we get into the answer, I'm going to switch back to the notes and give you a little bit more explanation on RAM. So RAM stands for random access memory. It's volatile memory. That means it's not storing it permanently, and it needs power in order to write data or access data. So when you turn on your computer, right, in order for your operating system to work, like Windows 10 to load up, or Mac OS to load up, or even on your phone when you turn it on, right, it needs that power source in order for the OS to access RAM. All applications and all software uses RAM. Then you have synchronous dynamic RAM, your SDRAM, which is what we are utilizing today for our computing system. So what it does is it syncs with the clock speed, right? And you would either have a combination of static or dynamic. Okay? And static is gonna not, it's basically it's writing in a sequential location, where compared to dynamic, it's writing across wherever it could find. Think of it like a mailbox where we would just throw mails into different slots as fast as we can, right? Or like how you would fill up your ice cube tray. In the static, it would fill from one to the next until it fills up, and then it rewrites over. Okay? Where compared to dynamic, it's going to be quicker. So what you see is static is often used, and it's more expensive to produce. You would see that being used in a processor, right? So when they have internal storage for the processor for caching, you would often see that. Compared to dynamic, is often used more on your regular RAM usage memory module. Okay. So the speed is in hertz, and it would say megahertz, and the number that you see in the question, the 2400, is indicating the speed for that module. Okay, so when you see that number in the 1000, that basically just indicating the speed of that RAM. So now in your system, there are various speeds with various components. Your motherboard, it's very important because the bus speed, the channel, the connection point on that motherboard tells you, right, how fast that could be. So my analogy to this is, think of it like you go to like those race speedway for car, like a racetrack, and you would have different lanes for different speed. Okay, now if you put a really fast sport car in a slow lane, this sport car can only travel up to that speed limit of that lane. So it's important to really think about the channel, the pathway, or the bus, right? Where how we interchange the data from one component to another, compared to, so you can have a super fast memory module, and if you have a slower board and processor, right, you're not optimizing the capacity or the strength of that particular module. So a lot of times people tell me, oh, I'm upgrading to this, but you have to think about you know, that path on how your components are communicated. Okay. So that's important to really look at as well, is the speed of the module and how that would correlate with your overall system speed. Then your single data rate SDRAM is your SDR SDRAM. Now that will be the same. It says that its input and output is the same as the one command transfer and one word. So what it's doing is when it's single, it's only doing a single word at a time, which limits it to be a lot slower compared to the double, twice that, right? So let's think about it. If I'm able to give you twice the speed, wouldn't that drive up the performance? Sure. So as we develop technology over time, we increase the speed because there's more demand in how fast our data needs to be processed for application, you know, whether for personal or business use. The next one is your DDR, and this is what you find common in the market today, right? And there's different level of DDR. So back in, I want to say early 2000, we would see DDR2, which is slower than the DDR4 because DDR2 was the double data rate compared to the DDR4 is double data rate. So it's quadruple it, okay? And now you would have DDR5 for video adapter, like for video memory, right? Which is faster than DDR4. So as we increase this value right here, you actually doubling the rate every single time. Okay, so we develop technology to be able to handle or give us the better performance. So the common memory module that you're going to see in the market if you want to upgrade your memory right now is the DDR4. When you're looking at video card, video adapter, you will see DDR5. DDR5 is in the works for RAM module, but they will mass produce it, you know, once the cost is a little bit less for the company. So you would see that in the next few years. Okay, and DIMM basically stands for dual inline memory module, and that is really the form factor to your desktop, meaning that how that memory card is laid out, the pin, right? Also the pin ties back to, you know, whether it's DDR, what type of DDR, the pin location, the gold part that where you connect to the slot. And the SODIMM I mentioned already, that's for the sizes for the laptop. So desktop, you would see your regular DIMM, and then the laptop, you would see SODIMM. So important things that you should take away from this, right? The physical size and the pin location, okay? The type is gonna tie to the pin, like DDR2, DDR3, DDR4. So if you're given a very old system, right, you might see DDR3 or DDR2. But if you're working with more of like your current computer or something very new, you would see DDR4. The speed, as I mentioned, is the number that's showing, it would say PC 2400 or PC, right, 1333, that's in megahertz. Okay, that's the speed. Think of it like when you buy a car and it tells you this is the top speed for that car, right? How fast can that car go? Will the computer take it to the top speed? Not always, right? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it throttle with the processor and also all the components. So most of the stuff that you're using on a regular basis is really on the baseline, which is the minimal end, okay? Also, you want to consider whether it would have timing. For memory, timing would be on how it would create the addresses in the memory. So whenever that you run an application, right, it would allocate space in that memory to have specific addresses, and that's how it keeps track. So let's think about, like, my analogy for this is kind of like, you know, those rent storage space. And each of the stored unit has the number, okay? And so when you run an application, it assigns the number to that storage space where you can put stuff in there, right? It could be image for video files or graphic files. It could be sound. It could be simple text like Word document. It could be, you know, various things. So it would allocate storage space for every single location, and with it, it would create the address number. And it keeps this address number as a way that it could track where everything would be located, similarly to the flash memory. So when you use your phone and take picture, you notice that it gives you a tag for that image number, right? And that image file, that file is tied with that image number, and that image number is tied to an address in your SD card or inside your phone for the internal memory. So when you delete a file, right, from your phone, like you delete a picture or a video, right, it doesn't necessarily go away. It actually is there until something else write over it. It's kind of like you evacuate all your items, you take out all your items from that storage space. That storage space doesn't go away. It's just going to be available for the next person to put in the next things for their items in there and lock it up, right? So this is why in the data recovery forensic part is that even when people logically delete their data on their phone through the OS and the application, forensic, we can still go in and we can take a look at the data because the tag is still there and possibly pieces of data still remain. Now, if you want to really delete something, is when you zero out everything, you write all zero into the actual device or the drive itself. Then you fully delete it. It just becomes zero, zeros, nothing. So you would use the software tool to do that. So before you throw away your hard drive, business, usually they require that you clean it out, that you zero out all your data on your hard drive before you toss it into the recycle bin, the electronic recycle bin that they have at some stores, and or you know, have people come and pick it up at your house, right? Make sure that you clean it out because you don't know where that's going to end up, right? And in some cases, government, they actually punch hole into the drive and the memory so that way it is physically not usable. So they would have these machines that would have really long, like nails, that would punch hole through the actual device. So that way it's completely unusable. And there are many ways that we can damage something. We can apply magnetic to it, right? Especially hard drive and memory. We can, you know, some people had tried this in the 80s and 90s that they put it into microwave, but it will ruin the microwave, right? Explode because it's metal. And so I don't recommend that, right? You want to make sure that you can zero out your drive and do it several times so it cleans it out. Because when it's dynamically writing, it's putting it in different location, and so whenever that you delete it, it just make that location available for the next application or for the next set of data. So this is why even your SD card that you take out from your phone, you should break it, right? People, they, you know, they burn it, they do different things to it, so that way it's completely destroyed, so it's not accessible. Okay. So on A+, they do ask about that, how you would properly, you know, retire a certain device. So the memory module would look like this. Some website, they will give you options on how to look at upgrades, right? Like Crucial, they produce RAM. And in Crucial, on Crucial website, you can actually compare, right, your memory module and what you can buy to replace it or upgrade it. Okay. And then some of them will be fancy. They will come with sleeves. And for the people who build gaming system, this is important because they want everything to match. They want it to look nice. They have a clear case. Sure, that will be great too. But ultimately, you care about the chipset that goes on the module, the functionality of it mostly. Okay. So it shows you different types here. Now, when you see the L, it means it's low voltage. Okay, that means it requires less energy source. So we can have something that's, you know, low voltage to conserve our memory, but most of the time you would see them without the low voltage option. Sometimes you have to pay a little bit more for that. So here it tells you the pin size. And I'll come back to this when we touch on desktop next week, right? So you can, I will do some installation on my desktop so you can see on how that's done on desktop. And you saw earlier that I had lifted my SODIMM up and I show you. So memory upgrade is like the simplest upgrade that you can do. Most people do it. Okay, so here's some of the steps and also pictures on how to go about doing it. Right, you open up that panel, make sure you destatic yourself and unplug the battery before that. You would remove the screws for the panel, and then what you do is there's a lever on the side. You would press that lever and it's going to prop it up at an angle. So what you do is you would handle it, don't touch the pin, but touch from the side right here, and take it out. Okay, then you can read the sticker to see, you know, what is the capacity, what is the speed, and you know, the brand, and possibly look for something higher or equivalent if you need to just directly replace it. Okay, so to answer that question here, what we have is this client has 4 GB of DDR4 2400, and she wants to upgrade it to higher capacity, right? Now, assuming that if it's installed only in one slot, then we can just add another equivalent card to it to give her 8 GB. So I have a 4 gig, she has a 4 gig. I can add another 4 gig to give her 8 gigs, right? For most business application, that will be okay. Now, if she's into like video capturing and audio recording for her business, we wanted to up it to at least 16, because that, you know, and assuming that her motherboard is allowed to take certain capacity, because sometimes motherboard will have a limit. It will say this system board is only going to take up to, and I think most of the current board, you know, would go 16 or higher to 32 GB. So you also need to reference the motherboard information as well. So here I simply just say that we can add another 4 GB into the second slot, which gives her 8 gig. Or if we want to go 16 gig, I would take out her memory module. I would find 2 of 8 gigs. That gives her a total of 16. And that would last a while, right? So for most cases. Okay. All right. Any questions as far as RAM? So I'm going to take you to a website real quick, and we're going to take a look at the specs so that way you know. Let's buy DDR4. So let's say you're shopping around for RAM upgrade, right? I'm going to go to Amazon because. So Amazon gives me some recommendation. There's different brands, right? And again, we want to refer to the motherboard information documentation before we start, you know, really purchase this. But let's say that I wanted to have a 16 GB, and this is for desktop, okay? So here it tells you the speed, 3000 megahertz, and it's 2 sticks of 8 gig each, okay? And this is the brand. So now if my desktop is able to do DDR4, right, because the pin size is designed for DDR4, that should be good. But something that you should consider too is that the cover right here, how that's going to fit, the form factor, the physical size, how that's going to fit. If you have a lot of components above it, it might not fit because it might sit too high. So that's important. So now let's say that we don't want it to do desktop. Let's look at some SODIMM on Amazon real quick. Okay, so you have variations of brand. Okay, so Kingston is in Fountain Valley, California. They're local to us. That's why you see them. You know, they're very affordable. They produce good memory. They've been around for a while. You have different brand here with different prices. So Team Group Elite. So you can have a one card that's a 16 gigabyte, and then this is its speed. So, you know, roughly this number right here is their rated speed, right? So they do testing and they would do the rate for the actual speed itself. So it will tell you the speed here. Important thing that you need to also look at is your non-ECC versus ECC. So ECC stands for error correction code. And in the case where you run into application writing to the RAM, and if it's running across some error, right, when it's writing the RAM, it's gonna prompt that code. So your OS would be able to recognize that when the application is launching. So often that you would see non-ECC cheaper because that's just a feature in the memory where it would say that this is better than having, you know, not having ECC is not as good as having ECC. So you want to have ECC so that way it would correct the error code when the application is running and it's writing the data. So you see, you know, various options, and they range about, you know, $50 and up or so, all depends. So if we're looking at one single card, you tend to pay a little bit higher in price, and it would say it's SODIMM for laptop, right? And then some technology has some additional extra little feature here and there, or you can do 2 sticks, right? That's going to give you 16.8 each. Okay, so in the case of our client, we can purchase, right, for the speed. Now you can go higher in speed, but never lower. So if it's 2400, then you can go 266 like this, okay? Versus if you go lower, right, you're not maximizing the capacity of that system. So you should try to go higher in speed or equivalent. First try equivalent or go higher. All right, so now let's talk about, do you have any question on RAM? Okay, so let's talk about smart cards reader. This is used in business a lot for access control, accessing their network, accessing, you know, drives on the network, accessing the data. Basically, it's a reader that would read the chip on the smart card, and smart card could be, you know, your driver license, your ID is smart card, your credit card is smart card. So it would use the ribbon to connect. This is the ribbon right here. Okay. Now, now I think a lot of the companies are using tablet that's attached if they're taking payments for POS systems and such. So that's a little bit different. But replacing the card reader, you would again disconnect the battery from the laptop, remove the cover, and you would detach the ribbon from the motherboard. It has a slot on the motherboard that would fit it, and then you would remove the screw holes around the card reader to detach it. You often see this on some of the older laptops for business. You know, if they're still using some of the older system, you might find it. Okay. All right, so to answer the next question, so you would have, you would use smart card reader for access control, for signature verification, or you can use it for POS system to process transaction payment, point of sale system. Okay, next one is optical drive, DVD, CD, Blu-ray, right? These are becoming obsolete. However, there are still laptops out there that would have these drives. Similar to the hard drive, most of the common newer ones would use SATA, which is the L-shaped connection, and you would always have the power and the data. Otherwise, you can't. And also on the optical drive, there is a speaker connection. Many technicians forget that, right? They forgot to plug in the speaker, and then when you run your DVD, you can't hear any sound. So when you test a laptop, you pop a DVD or a CD or a Blu-ray in to the optical drive, and it's not giving you sound. Check your speaker configuration, and then likely that cable came loose or it got disconnected, okay? Because many people make that mistake. I used to get on my students about that all the time when they plug everything back in. So make sure that we document the mounting screws. We're gonna mount it. Now you can use external DVD burner, CD and Blu-ray as well, and that goes to USB, which is a little slower, but that will work as well. Okay, so those are called optical drives. Mini PCI Express. So PCI stands for Peripheral Component Interconnect. This allows you to add on more things, more components to that location, that slot, that plug-in location on your board. And it's mainly for peripheral. So let's say that back in the day, we didn't really have Wi-Fi adapter that's built in. So we can add a Wi-Fi adapter, but now you can use USB. You can add a video card or a video graphic adapter, your GPU. You can also add additional storage as long as it's an M.2, because sometimes it's not. So the MPCIe is really for us to add on more components, right? So we can say, to answer that question, we can say that we can add on more peripherals in general. Okay, could be sound. Let's say that I'm running a recording studio. I can add on a sound capture card. I can add on additional video graphic adapter. Upgrade from the built-in one for the laptop so I can play games. So there are many options there. Okay, any questions regarding 13 or 12? All right. So much information, right? I'm sorry, it's just you gotta go over some of the basic before. So, but I hope you can get some additional insight about this. So it shows you the steps in the pictures on how to remove it, right? Take it apart, some of the adapter. So the adapter that they're using is a wireless adapter. It will look something like this for your laptop. And we don't see this as much. Now we have mobile devices that uses more cellular network, right? Our laptop is really used for your general Wi-Fi network. But in the older laptop, you would have a cellular card. So that laptop can also access, you know, mobile networks, right? Cellular networks like T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T. But it would require a SIM card, very much like your smartphone. And in order to attach that SIM card, you would have an adapter to read that SIM card. So it talks a little bit about this, how to implement this or work on to repair it. And then video graphic to GPU. I'll come back to a video adapter when we touch on next week. Okay, so let's talk about screens. Many cases, you're gonna get a laptop with cracked or broken screen. right? And in my opinion, outside of the processor, screen is the next expensive component on the laptop. Sometimes replacing the screen is equivalent to buying a cheaper laptop. So for example, somebody gave you a Dell laptop and the screen is cracked, so you can't really see anything from it, but it's still running, right? So you can, look on eBay to see if somebody is selling the equivalent screen. Sometimes they do, or you can contact Dell to see if they have a replacement part. If it's older, most likely they don't produce that anymore, so you might have to have a workaround, right? Now, if it's still working, sometimes you can attach it to a monitor using an HDMI port, the connection, or the VGA or, DVI port, so you can still see as a computer, but it's no longer a portable computer because now you have a monitor that's attached to it, right? So the option for the screens are you would have a liquid crystal display, which is LCD, tends to have a little bit more burn-in image. So let's say that that person have their family picture in the background and they have it on for many years, right? When you change the background, it's still going to show a little bit of the outline, the shadow of it. Those are burnt-in images, okay? Now, on the later technology, you tend to see a little bit less of it, but if it's produced cheaply, you're going to see burnt image. OLED is more common now, right? It consumes less power. Kind of argument in between. It depends on when the LCD was produced, but I do tend to see LED. So the main difference is that LED has a backlight, so it's brighter because it has a backlight. As it lit up, right? And with LED technology, with the organic LED, in some cases now, those are bendable. So you often see touchscreen laptop comes with OLED, okay? So laptop will come accommodated with all the extra components like webcam, like as I'm using now, microphone, Wi-Fi, and so forth. But liquid crystal display, it uses the illuminated light from the module for the pixel, and it passes through an actual crystal. So in some manufacturer, they only produce LCD, or some manufacturer, they will produce both. And you see this on TV and monitor and laptop screens. For some laptop screen, you can actually detach it. So some of the older model, right, like from Dell or HP, you can flip it to make it a tablet, and also you have a button to actually detach the screen. Now, sometimes the hinges on the attachment of the screen can go bad, right? So when in that case, the cable behind the protection for the hinges also get loose. So sometimes the laptop screen would not receive signal accordingly, and it's unstable. Okay. Now, in some cases, laptop screen can be damaged, not just because it's dropped, but sometimes it would be burned out. And replacing the component within it is actually costs more than just replacing the laptop. So some cases I would tell the client, you might as well buy a new laptop, because the screen costs $400 and your laptop, you can get an equivalent laptop for $300. So sometimes it's not really worth it to replace the screen. But the OLED is more advanced and it's thinner, which makes it more vulnerable to cracks. However, it is brighter, and sometimes people would use filter to help them with their eyes. So with the DC jack, if the DC jack fails for laptop, it cannot charge the battery. And if the battery is not charged, right, you have to plug the laptop in order for it to run. It cannot run with just the battery on its own. Okay, so here it talks about how you can unplug the DC jack power cord and remove it. In some cases, on some system, you have to solder after you open the cover, but you know, most of the time on the DC jack fails, then possibly that the battery doesn't charge. Also, people charge battery incorrectly to start, right? So your battery has a memory of the cycle on how it's charged. If it's keep getting plugged in, the cycle, you know, when it's not fully used to the end, the cycle becomes lessened, and over time it will just reduce, so the battery becomes less usable. So on the newer battery, you know, they improved this technology to make sure that the cycle is remained. But in some cases, you see this with smartphone and tablet too, right?
So what would be the proper way to make sure you charge your computer so that doesn't happen?
So you get a brand new system that's half charged, right? And they would tell you right away, the first thing is to make it fully charged before you use it, okay? So charge it fully, then use it. Then you would use it until it's almost out. It will notify you have like 5-7% left. Then you plug it in, you charge it fully again, and then use it, because a lot of the time I'm even guilty of this, right? Sometimes I have a meeting while my thing is charging, I have to charge it. But if you do that at the beginning, it creates that cycle, the memory for that cycle as a complete cycle. Because if you use it halfway, it just lessens the cycle, and then it reduces that cycle to you know, a smaller span of the memory, the battery.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so the DC jack looks like this. Okay, and then I have it on mine too. One of my students took it out the other day. I think it's plugged back in. Let me see if I can show you. Or maybe next week I'll take it out for the sake of time. So we talk about removing battery. We talk about looking at the model for the battery, right? The touchpad. And some touchpads is a little bit different for the older ones, right? And then it would have a pointing device, like on the old IBM system, it would have a little button for pointing device. But on average, you would have, you know, the 2 buttons left and right, and then to be able to control your system. And just like all the input devices, it has a ribbon, right? So when you replace touchpad, you know, you would have to detach the ribbon similarly to the keyboard. So I try to get the image for you there.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
I know that sometimes in the manual, it'll say that you have to get, like, say it's a Dell laptop, you have to get the Dell battery, or else, you know, it might not work properly. How do you, is that they're just trying to make money, or do you have to use?
It's proprietary. You can use generic, but generic won't give you the full cycle like what they recommend. You can find generic replacement, but you know, most of the time it will work, but there's a chance that it won't work properly. But yeah, Dell did that on purpose, and some of the Dell laptop, you have to open the case to actually access the battery. And when you do that, you might void the warranty. So make sure that you read your warranty carefully.
Oh no, it was like a 2007 Dell.
So my recommendation, I had an HP that was like that, and I used a generic one and it worked. But I did read on HP website that particular model they recommend that you use theirs. But yes, you know, I would, you know, if you want to save some money, you can try the generic. But if you want to be for sure, then you would use the proprietary. You would use their battery.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So you have to take a risk if you want to use the generic. That's typical. Okay. So speakers are built in, and a lot of the time motherboard comes with speaker now. So when you have failed speaker, you need to check to make sure that your output connection is appropriate. Cable, right? And so when we troubleshoot, we'll talk about the troubleshooting process. Sometimes it could be the case, and then you have to test your possible solutions. So you have to lift up the speaker, and then most of the time you have to go to the manufacturer to get the replacement for the speaker. And then motherboard. Motherboard is mounted so with the actual screw. So we want to make sure that we remove all the components before we remove the board. And rarely that you have to replace motherboard, only, you know, in some cases, like let's say I upgrade my processor, which has to use a different board, then I would replace the board. But a lot of the times motherboard, you know, in rare cases that it would be manufactured, so we would have to replace the motherboard. And you would contact the vendor, the manufacturer, and read the documentation on how you can go about have a replacement board. Desktop is easier, however, right? So, and on mine, let me switch camera and I can show you. So let me see. I have to. So on mine, you would see that so on mine, you would see it's the blue in the back right there. You see that? Okay, so earlier we saw the processor sitting. So that's the blue part of it. So the processor is on top of it. So all the in the back, that would be your, let's see, I gotta angle it. Yeah, so all of that in the back, the blue part right here is actually the system board. So in order to get access to it, I gotta remove the RAM, I gotta remove all the other components before I can have access to it, and then you can unscrew. Okay, so a little bit more steps in removing the motherboard versus, you know, just replacing components, definitely. Okay, so let's get back. Any question? So I'm going to try to go over this as much as I can, and then I have to switch over to the lab so that way I can give you a little bit more details. And if you want to, you can refer to the note. You should be able to find most of the questions. If you cannot, right, I will address it next week. Okay? All right. So DC jack fails, battery will not charge. You might find this question on the quiz as well, right? What components must you disconnect to remove the laptop system board? You have to remove all the storage devices like your hard drive, your RAM. You also need to take off its fan because it's usually the fan is near the processor. You need to also disconnect your screen from it, your display connection, additional cables, and also screws in order to take it out. Okay, so we're gonna take everything from the top out, and then anything that's attached to it, then we can take the screws and remove it. And remember, when you handle it, even though if it's still, you know, you suspect that it's gone bad, try to touch the side, not the board itself. Comparison from LCD to OLED, right? You would see the OLED is brighter because it has a backlight. OLED is lighter, so it's more flat, and this is when you would see more of the thinner laptop, you would see OLED. Arguably energy efficient, I believe LED is a little bit more energy efficient, but you know, the margin on the new technology now is very small. Faster refresh rate, definitely. So when you look at screen, when you purchase screen, TV, monitor, laptop, right? Anything that would require screen, you need to also take a look at the refresh rate. 60 is the average for the hertz. The higher the refresh rate, the better it is for your eyes. So when you get a monitor or TV or laptop, it will tell you the rating for the refresh rate. when you actually see this, if you ever take your phone and record a video of somebody sitting in front of the computer, you see the cycle of the refresh, the line that's coming through their screen, right? The faster the line goes, that's how it indicates the faster the refresh rate. In our normal human eye, we cannot really see it because our eyes is not as fast. But when you take an image of it, like a video, you often see it, right? So you want to shop for a screen that has a higher rate, like 110 or 112, compared to 60 or 80 hertz, okay? And I mentioned that it's thinner, okay? Now, importantly, as I mentioned earlier, the screen can go bad because of the inverter. So the inverter is the screen is designed with an inverter. Then inverter is used to convert power at the lower voltage for the backlight. So if the screen doesn't turn on, the backlight is not lit up, possibly that the inverter has gone bad. Okay. Now, if the inverter fails, that's very common with the LCD, then it is inexpensive to replace. There are tutorials for it, right? But you know, if you don't want to attempt it, then you can replace the entire screen. So that would require you to open up the screen and, you know, to be able to replace the inverter, because without it, right, it cannot convert power, and without power, it cannot turn on, just the screen. Okay. You don't have to put verbatim, but, you know, for the answer, you can just summarize it. Now, with the backlight failure, you have to disassemble the entire screen, okay? So down to all the individual components. So we got to take everything apart. So the screen is an entire unit, and you would use specific tool to prop the screen, very much like some of the tablet. So you have to detach the front from the back in order to access the components inside. And if you're not careful, it can leak and it can crack. So that's why this part is a little bit more tedious, because we have to pay attention to what kind of force do we apply to be able to detach it. Some screen, right at the hinges, there would be, you know, some screw to be able to open it up. But other screens, because the way it's sealed, right, you have to really use like a little metal plier to really prop it, right, and so you can open it. But I would look at the documentation before I attempt it. Okay. Let's see. And then on the digitizer for the touchscreen, digitizer is mainly used to sense touch from your finger. Okay. So that's its whole purpose. So when you touch the screen, right, number one, it senses heat. Number two, it senses pressure. And the same thing on your phone. It has a digitizer. And what that does, it sends the signal, right, to the actual system to determine whether you're typing, right, if you're running like a text application, you're typing on your smartphone, or on the laptop touch screen, digitizer its job is to convert that. It sends the touch and it transmits that signal to the system. Okay, and you can find all of this information also in our notes, right, after it talks about, I'll come back on CPU next week. Display components, antenna, there's the inverter on page 17. And then digitizer on page 20 right here. So function keys, uses control like volume, connection, brightness, right? I use it sometimes. You can put it on mute. You can lower the brightness on your screen. So function key can be very useful. And those function keys are the F's on the top, and it would have every laptop is different, right? Manufacturer, they choose to use the function key. So they would have little picture showing what each of the function would be. And also in their manual. Okay, so going back to our documents. So for 21, I just put down for volume settings, for my Bluetooth connection, for dual display, possibly, or you can put things onto airplane mode. So that way it disconnects from the network. And quite often companies would use docking station. The old docking station is this big bulky thing that you would attach cable, or you would use a cable from it to attach it to your laptop for charging, for getting data from the network, for connecting components, right, to projection or whatnot. On the newer one, it's a small little box, and usually it has HDMI, USB for charging. You know, very few ports on it now. So, you know, I looked at this when we were looking at option to go with Alienware Area 51 laptop for Makerspace, right? We looked at some of the docking station, and we decided to go with a different system because the cost of it would be more from Dell. But so basically, we would use it for charging, connection, sometimes cryptography, encryption, especially when you deal with highly sensitive data. Access. So how do you prevent data theft from mobile device system docking? You should password lock, right? Anytime you walk away from your computer, you should hit Control-Alt-Delete and choose lock computer, right? Or you can just, you know, have it to go to sleep, because in order to get back in, you have to log in, right? Some people, they would configure their system to not have a password. I don't recommend it because it's, you know, it's unsecure and anybody can see your data. Also, if you're sharing your computer at home, make sure you have separate accounts for, you know, people that's using it, so that way you can track what kind of stuff that they're using. And also, when it becomes a legal case, they have to, you know, get court approval for every single account, and that protects your privacy. And that's important. I talk about that in my security class. What other type of mobile devices? You named this in your team activity already. Tablets, smartphones. Could be smartwatch, right? Home assistant device, right? Like the thermostat, your smart thermostat, Alexa, all kinds of different devices that you can use. The wearable ones, fitness is a big one right now, smartwatches and fitness band, earphones, virtual reality, that's coming up as well. So when you troubleshoot nowadays, you have to troubleshoot. All of these are computing devices, so we got to be able to, you know, get some experience on how to handle some of that too. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through cable real quick, so that way you know, because I know that you know how it physically should look like, but you might not know the name. Okay, because in the industry they start referring to names, so we want to make sure you know how to identify them. So to the left, the green cable is the 30-pin iOS iPower sync cable. This was common with the iPod era, right? Some of you were too young for that. But with the older Apple systems, you see them. Then some of the older iPhone uses the Lightning, and notice on the Lightning it has the little white with the gold pin, and it's flat like this. That is used for charging or sync data. This one is a mini USB, and it has a groove right on the side. That means it has a cutout on the side. That's a mini USB. This is for older Android and some of the older system for charging or data. Then on the next one is the micro USB. So a few years ago, this came out, right? And you do see some of them. So I charge my Bluetooth headphone with this, with micro USB. Okay. And then lastly is USB Type-C. Now, Type-C is used for power and data, just like, so I have a laptop, a newer laptop that uses Type-C for charging and also data syncing. But not all devices with Type-C can be charged through the USB cable. Some of them only uses for data syncing.
I have a question about these cable connections. So is there a way to tell from looking somewhere in your device which type of USB charger? Because I mean, there's been a time where I purchased the wrong cord before without knowing.
Yeah, so physically they are all different, right? Type-C, it looks almost oval, they're round edges, okay? Now the mini is always gonna have like the edge curved in, and that's older. And then this one, it looks like a D. So physically they are very different. Okay. But when you purchase USB, just make sure. You can also tell, but on your OS, it's just gonna say USB 2.0. So you have to examine the physical, the form factor of the USB connection, that port.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Also the pin, looking at the pin. Okay, so that's the cable. That's just some of the cable. We're gonna get more into other cable types. Okay. So near field communications is NFC. This is good for like, point of sale system. It's good for remote control of things. You can turn this on your smartphone. All smartphone has this to control different devices. Your Bluetooth, infrared, AO211, Wi-Fi. So these are some of the type of connection that you would have for mobile devices. Okay. And then your battery charger, you can use the AC connection, which is round, or you can use USB charging. Okay. Okay. Any question? I know I have about 40 minutes left. I feel like even with 4 hours, I don't have enough time with everybody for this course, but I want to give you a lot of information so you are equipped to really handle the basics. Okay. So one of the things that we can do on system, right, is to look at whether they would have some kind of addresses, especially on Windows. So, and the Ethernet adapter or the Wi-Fi adapter would have a physical address, and this address pertains to that device. So, and from a security standpoint, I tell my student that system always call home. It's always going to advertise to other hosts that's using that it is this entity, right? And how does it do that? Either through an IP address or a MAC address, which is media access controller. So if I'm in command line, right, I'm using Windows 10, I can type in CMD for command prompt. How you troubleshoot connection for your laptop is if you want to see if there's an address that's issued for your laptop, right? And then also the physical address ties to how that system is seen by switches in the network, because the switch is the middleman that's going to pass that data to the gateway, which we will address in the networking class. But if I do ipconfig /all, ipconfig, basically we're looking at configuration for IP addresses on Windows system, and /all is for all the details. Okay, and if you don't know what command to use, you can use question mark or help right? To, if you type in help, it actually gives you a bunch of different commands in the definition. So if I do ipconfig /all, I would see a bunch of information, right? And I can look at what kind of information is given to me. Okay, so here is my Wi-Fi LAN adapter. Okay, and so I would see that I'm connected to certain domain. I have a certain addresses. So here's my MAC addresses right here for that adapter. And every adapter would have this built in. It's kind of like a birth certificate for the adapter, right? It's given by the manufacturer, and the manufacturer is given by with a range of addresses to use. So it's like kind of like saying that you have a social security number that's tied to your name, and the government issue you that social security number, right? Very much like that. The manufacturer gets a set of addresses by the organization that manage these addresses. So every device that you use that connect to the network, right? Your smartphone, your smartwatch, they all have physical addresses. Okay. And on Linux and Apple system, we use ifconfig, not ipconfig. Okay. So that's just a quick, brief thing into networking. So to answer 29, you're going to have ifconfig /all in command prompt, which is Windows command line. And for your iOS devices like the iPhone or your MacBook Air, you would go to the setting menu, and then you would look at the Wi-Fi address. And Apple, sometimes it uses UID or identifier instead of like MAC address. It calls it something else, but you would see letters and numbers with the dashes, right? That would tell you what kind of address, that's a physical address to that system. So when we trace people, this is how we trace people with the devices. So if I'm suspecting that there's an attacker in my network, right, I would see what kind of addresses they're using with IP and MAC. Sorry, my dogs are so antsy. They keep wanting to get in and out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over 31, and I'm going to switch over to the lab. So all you have to do is to answer, actually 31, 32, the last two questions, which is super easy. You can do it on your own. For 31, right, when you set up your Gmail, your Yahoo account, your Outlook.com, all of these webmail-based services uses a protocol called POP3. And, you know, Google and Apple makes it really easy that it asks you to just authenticate, and then it does everything on its own. But when you set up computer, you have to select the service, right? So when you're using that webmail server, like Google webmail server, that relates to what we call POP3 protocol. So all your webmail client service, and you're using it as a client, uses POP3. Now in the company, right, like your student email or my MVC email account, we use IMAP with POP3 because I can log in using my Outlook.com, so I can use my online Outlook account tied to MVC.edu account. But ultimately, in the back, Moreno Valley College and RCCD, they offer a server, that service mail for the students and staff and faculty, and it uses a protocol called IMAP. So this is configured for email server. That kind of leads into the next class, but just to give you a very brief thing on it. So sometimes you have to set up the mail client for your business or for people. And radio firmware is essential because, and firmware is essential in general. In security practices, we tell people update your firmware all the time because this is where we can close out some of the security issue, like your surveillance camera, right? So on your smartphone, if you're using your NFC to control other devices or even Bluetooth firmware, the radio firmware allows us to manage or access resources on that system. So that firmware is basically instructions that's written for the hardware. So every hardware would have some firmware, would contain its information and some basic information, instruction on how it's going to be operated. Like the hard drive would have firmware, USB would have firmware. So when you update that, that allows you to improve the reliability along with the security with it. So it becomes more reliable versus, you know, where if it's not usable, possibly because it's unreliable. So on the firmware end, you should always update the firmware. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to like speed it up so I can have some time for your lab with you. Do you have any questions for me? Okay, so 33 and 34, you should be able to answer that from your own personal experience, right? What do you think, and what are the three main types? Now, when you finish, you can save your document. You can turn it in by next Saturday, or if you're done today, you can turn it in. So just click submit on that assignment, and then you can attach the file, and then click submit again, and it's gonna go through. And I will get it, and I will grade it. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to drop in a file into the chat in case you don't have access to Canvas. And I want you to also, if you have Canvas access, go and open Lab 1. Download Lab 1. Any question before we start the lab? No question? Sorry, 4 hours might be a lot, but we're to the last 30 minutes now, okay? Good job, everybody. So I'll give you the Lab 1 file through the chat. If you guys are using Zoom, once in a while, update the Zoom client, because Zoom, sometimes it has security issues. So I recommend it. If you're using it through the browser, not so much, but. Okay, so are we okay? Any questions? So we're gonna start with ports and more. So earlier I had a question on how can you tell what is what, right? Like how do you tell? A lot of people, even, you know, they know computers, sometimes they don't know what it's called. So I want to make sure you leaving this class knowing what everything is. Okay, so at least you are knowledgeable for your own personal use, or, you know, to help other people as well, or for work purposes. So what I did was I took a picture. I'm going to share screen real quick. And I added label to it so that way you can identify it. Okay, so we'll go through it together. So this is a side of a laptop. Okay, and you see them in all different variations. Some have more than others. So this laptop is fairly maybe a few years old, right? Maybe 4 or 5 years old. So you would see some of the older SD card. So for number 1, you can type out number 1. This is for memory stick reader, and we would use memory stick for various things, including video camcorder back in the day, right? Or, you know, could be for from another system, another device. So this is a regular SD card slot. So you can insert the regular SD, right? SD stands for secure digital. And the old SD was used for digital camera. It could use for, you know, video camera, It could be used for the older phones. So if you need to transfer data, like pictures and stuff, you would take out the SD and put it in there. Now that's different from your micro SD, which is tiny, right? So the size change over time. Also capacity and performance also change. But that's for the regular SD, which is larger. They still sell those. Then this one is older, right? So when you see some of the older monitor or TV, it comes with this blue cable connection with the 2 screws on the side, right? That is for VGA. It's for video graphic array. It's used to connect to another monitor or for media projection for a projector. Okay. And then we have HDMI, and HDMI we can connect through one cable. We would get video and sound, and there's different grade of HDMI, of course. They have also the mini HDMI now, which is smaller. But this is the regular HDMI, so you can use that again for monitor and projector connection. Number 5 is USB 3.0. And the difference between the 3.0 and the 2.0, the industry standard practice-wise, the manufacturer, they normally would put in blue for the 3.0. So physically, when you see that, you know it's a 3.0 or 3.1, I should say. Proper term is 3.1. But most of the boxes you're going to see for components, it will say 2.0, 3.0. But technically, they stop at 3.1x. So, but 3.0 for external device connection, like hard drive. It could be other things. You can use that to charge your phone. So it draws the power from your laptop. And then 2.0 looks the same, but usually it's black. And not all manufacturers would change that to blue, but in the documentation, they would say which one is which. But 2.0 would look like this and that would be for external connection, and that's for 6. And then let me zoom out a little bit. So for 7 is an Ethernet port, and that allows us to connect to the local area network using the cable, right? And that will be your Ethernet port. This allows you to connect your computer to your router physically through a cable if you can't connect wirelessly, and it's faster through a cable. And then 8 is round, and that's for DC. So this is how you charge this laptop is through the power connection here. So the DC connector, and it's for battery charging or system power. Okay, so that gives you the general, and there could be different ones, but this is just a standard, right? So you have from 1 through 8, and you should know each of the port. So video, these 2, right? Data storage, these 2, and then USB for external devices. Network connection is this one, and then power is this one. Number 8. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so from here on out, right, you should pick up a laptop and you should be able to identify the ports mostly. If you don't know what that is, then you can also find the information on the web. But I added another one that looks a little different so you can see. So again, we have A as your media card slot, right? And media card usually refer to SD and different forms. Sometimes if it's, sometimes it will say HXSD, which is just the high definition version of it for like video recording and pictures. And also there are different sizes with the versions of it. So that is for media card slots. And then for B, it's a little bit different, but this one is for express card slot. So that was short-lived. They released something that's close to the SD, but it's supposed to read and perform better. And you often see that it was sold for media purposes like sound and audio, audio and video, I'm sorry. And then this is the micro HDMI, which is smaller than the regular HDMI. From far away, it looks like, you know, the USB, but it's not, right? If you look closely, the pin size for the HDMI is different. So if it doesn't fit, it's not supposed to go there. Don't force it. Okay, you will ruin the cable, you ruin the connection point. So take a look at the pin on how it matches up first from the cable end and the port connection. And then we have again the 2.0 USB. And E is FireWire. So FireWire came out a long time ago. Apple was the first to implement it. It was specifically used for Apple, just like how they use Lightning cable and, you know, their AirPods, right? Their stuff is very proprietary. It's only to Apple. So other companies like Sony and Philips start to see, oh, wow, you know, this is much faster than what we currently use. So what we'll do is we'll implement it too. And FireWire a lot of the time was used for connection to media devices that require high performance and high speed. So Apple, right, Sony call it iLink, links for Texas Instrument. And I think Sony Philips have their own cable as well. So FireWire was rated in A and B, but the last version that they had it is 1394. FireWire is still being used today, okay, and it's used for high transfer of data. So you would see some of that still. And then on this one, it has a little slot right here for security lock where you can slide it and it will lock that laptop and you would need the key. So sometimes there would be physical security that comes with the laptop as well. So that's kind of cool to see. But most of the time we would use a physical lock, right, that ties the laptop to a table or something like that. Or we would use digital locking where you can have it surveillance. It will track where that laptop will go. So in case it's stolen, they can wipe it, just like how you use your iCloud or some of these tools to wipe. And then it will lock the hard drive, so it encrypts the hard drive, and there's no way that that person can use that system. So there are many security features now that we can implement for our mobile devices. Okay. So on 2, it says, given a laptop with the below specification, what's your recommendation for upgrade? So you have an Acer laptop. It's an Aspire 5. That's the model number. The size is 15.6 inch. That's the standard. It has Intel Core i5, which is the processor, and it has the 8th generation. Normally, Intel, the way they label their processor, when it's 8th generation, you would see that it start with 8. 7 start with 7. So they try to keep it pretty easy to identify. And the speed is, it clocks at 1.6 gigahertz. It has 8 gig of RAM, 512 gigabyte of solid state drive. It has an integrated NVIDIA GeForce MX 250. So it's a little bit better than your standard GPU. And that's built in. And it runs Windows 10 64-bit home. Okay. Now, there's not really a right or wrong answer to this because you can upgrade everything, of course, right? but you need to think about, right, what that laptop is being used for. So let's say that if this is for business application and traveling and such, right, the important thing that we're going to have is we're going to require, of course, RAM because of applications, and connectivity is important. So you can go about thinking about, do I upgrade more RAM, right? Does this person need more data storage? So maybe we can go with a bigger hard drive as far as capacity, not physically bigger, but a terabyte hard drive. We can do both. So storage, we can upgrade storage. So in my opinion, I would start with storage upgrade. That's cost efficient. Okay, so we can go up to with more memory, and we can up the storage drive so they can store more data. Now, for the person that needs more processing power, right, like if they're doing something like video editing, then we would need RAM on processor and storage. But or if they're gaming, or if they require a lot of processing power for their work to crunch reports and do data analysis, then we would consider upgrading from i5 to i7, right? But with that, we possibly have to upgrade the motherboard. Okay. Microsoft announced that they're going to stop at Windows 10, so they're just going to push updates, so we don't need to upgrade on the software end. Now, if you want a better video adapter for this person to game, right, outside of upgrading the processor, we can consider adding a video adapter for it as well. So there are many things that we can upgrade in this. I want you to choose a couple of things that you want to upgrade if you own this laptop. So you can start thinking about, how do you go about doing it? Okay. Any question for 2? I just want to double check and make sure that I got everything. So we're not doing number 3 because we're not physically there at the college, but so I want you to take this experience that you have and be able to implement that with your course project and also your personal, right, a computer maintenance and repair. So after today, you have a little bit more information on how to approach upgrading and possibly looking at some of the issue. After next week, you will probably feel a little bit more comfortable. But what I tell my students is don't be afraid of it. It's one of those things that you have to get your hands in there and be able to kind of, get the practice or get used to the practice and get used to how you would fix the computer or improve your computer. Okay. Now, if you have, I have a few students that also upgraded their old iMacs and their old MacBook, as long as there's no more warranty on it. And the easiest upgrade for those or replacement is hard drive, RAM. The old iMac, it has the cover panel like the laptop, directly access to the RAM, so you can also upgrade RAM. But on the newer one, everything is soldered in, so they don't want you to go in there and start meddling around. Some of the model you can, but you have to make sure that you don't void the warranty because the system costs a lot for Apple. Okay, and then we'll talk about Chromebook and other things down the line. But do you have any questions for me? I'm getting close to about the last 10 minutes now. Okay, so if you complete with lab 1, go ahead and save it and then also submit it as a document with your answer. Let me go back.
A quick question.
Yes.
My internet just dropped a bit. I didn't hear what you said for number 3.
For number 3, we don't do anything on number 3. I wrote that originally I thought that we will be able to return to campus, so I can have you go and identify the components, but no, you don't need to do anything for number 3. Just ignore it. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I will post a recorded video. The Zoom recording will go up in about an hour or so because Zoom is gonna wrap it up. 4 hours kind of long, so they take at least an hour to give me the cloud video. And then I gotta take that video and I gotta get it into YouTube to also utilize their artificial intelligence for captioning and editing it. So the caption video will go up either tonight or tomorrow. I'm gonna try my best to get it up, and I will post it in week 1, so you can always go back and watch the video if you have questions or if you wanted something to look at the content of the session again. And then you should be able to access this course a little bit after it's over. So let's say a month from now, you wanted to view your grade and some of the content. I allow it, but then they will archive it, I think, after a year. So normally some instructor, they will disable it, but I let my student, it will be read only. So you can't submit things after the course, of course, but okay. Well, let's see, I do have a few minutes, so let me I stop share screen, and then I'm going to touch on your team activity and we'll call it a day. Do you have any questions or anything you need? Okay.
Just a random question. What kind of dogs do you have?
I have Shepherd Husky mix. One dog, he's a male dog. He is 120 pounds.
Oh, those are big dogs.
Yeah, and my female dog, his sister from the same litter, she is 70 pounds. And my male dog has recently been diagnosed with cancer, but we have decided not to go through the procedure. I just saw the oncologist and the specialist, the surgeon, last week, and we spent quite a bit of money just to get him to evaluate, or both of them to evaluate. And yeah, so he's 11, or he's about to be 11 this December. And so we're just gonna try to take care of him. He has 2 tumors on his rib cage, but they are great dogs. They love walking and playing and everything still. So, I love my dogs. Those are my kids.
Yeah. What are their names?
Mickey and Morgan. And I live in Moreno Valley, so if you see a small lady with 2 large dogs walking, most likely that's me. I don't walk them as much because it's so hot now, yeah, but definitely. When it gets cool again. Yeah. So, but yeah, they get a little anxious during the afternoon, and my students, before, they would hear them barking.
I'm the same way. I have a 70-pound golden retriever, and he wants to be walked way more than I can with this heat.
Yes. And unfortunately, so I have to wait till like 9 p.m. before I would get off work at 10 and come home and walk the dogs. But,
okay. Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll let you guys finish up the session. I'll look at your Microsoft form. I'll announce the team information next week, but don't forget to submit your team activity, like your team name in Canvas, so you can get the participation for today. And so far, I'm sorry, I have to talk a lot if because of Zoom, and but in the future we would offer this physically. I wanted to do it physically, but they wouldn't let me. I fought with the dean for a week about it, but however, I have apprenticeship stuff that's coming up. I will share that with you so you can get work. Also, some CompTIA information. We do have some certification for free that's coming up through our Perkins funding. And there were some students asking about where to go buy cheaper parts, and also what kind of recovery software to use. If you're interested in signing up for the networking class, that's 824B. I can give you the ad code, just email me. And then the security one is 824C, and those are also free, and textbook free as well. And then I teach regular credit courses, of course, but let me know. All right, thank you for the good first day. Yay, we got through it 4 hours. I'll see you here, same channel, same time on Saturday next week. Okay. So.
I had a question about like tools and stuff.
Yes.
Are we gonna need everything that you posted on the supply list?
You don't need everything, but if you want to put together your toolkit, now is the time because you're gonna start working on your project, fixing your own system or helping someone with their system. So at least a screwdriver and some of the basics. But if I'm gonna talk to the dean about to see if they can loan out tools because we do have quite a set of tools over. But let's see if they have a good checkout system. I'll let you know further what she says.
I just want to know, like, what would be the basic? The screw set?
Yeah, screwdriver set, small and large for Phillips flathead. Maybe a small flashlight, you can get that at a dollar store. If you can buy an anti-static wrist strap for a few dollars, I recommend it. That comes in handy. And let's see, pliers, wire cutter. I would recommend a little, if you have a small container that you can use for screw, that will be good. Or I sometimes use Ziploc if I can't find anything. But you can just put together your kit.
Okay, yeah, the basic stuff that you already mentioned, those are the basic stuff.
Yes. If you want to buy the whole kit from online, sure, that's great. But you might not need it if this is not going to be your profession, if you just use it occasionally. You should have most of the stuff in your household already. So except for the anti-static wrist strap. But if you don't have that, you can touch a metal surface and grab it.
Yeah. I actually already have all that. I just wanted to ask.
Yeah.
The basic stuff we would need.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
I saw the Arctic Silver on Walmart.com. There's like 20 versions. How do I know which one to buy?
So you don't need anything fancy. Arctic Silver should be about $7 or less. One tube is gonna last you a long time, and it's like a pinky size, right, in a tube, and you're only gonna use about a pea size of it. So if you only upgrade processor once, you're only gonna need it a pea size of it. So any of the version is fine. I would go with like the most affordable one because it's gonna do its job. Arctic Silver is great in general. You can get the generic brand too. That's okay too.
Thank you.
We'll talk about CPU next week. I'll do some demo. I'm actually gonna get into my desktop and show you that. Hopefully the webcam will cooperate. Any other questions?
One more question.
Yes.
When we submit the team challenge, you said just to write the team name for those for us that didn't write the answers.
Yes. And then I'll look at your team challenge information, the one that has more creative answers and that thought more. Then maybe I'll send each of the team member a $10 gift card or something. I do that in my class sometimes. So.
Do we need to put the team members or just the team name?
It's on your form already, but yeah, for your submission, just your team name is okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. It's beautiful outside. It's cooling down. So enjoy your weekend. I'll see you Saturday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye, Professor.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, interpreter. You're awesome. You have my heart.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye, Lee. I'm going to sign off now. Take care, Lee.
All right, Professor. See you later.
Okay, take care.